And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's Wednesday, April 3rd, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann, the co-host, along with my son, Joe Hagmann. Today we're in studio. Folks, you're about to hear 3 hours of the most important news of the day, uncensored, unbiased. We broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 Eastern Time. Our home base on the internet is HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com. Not affiliated with any government website at all. We are an independent organization. And of course, you can watch us live in high-def video at www.thehagmanandhagmanreport.com. That complements of the Christians United Broadcasting Network. And we have a very special program for you tonight. Before we get into it, I just want to welcome new listeners, those new listeners in Santa Rosa, California, Mississauga, Ontario, and Everett, Washington, listening to us via personal computer tonight, and also the crew that we heard from in just north of Jerusalem in the nation of Israel. I want to welcome you to our program tonight. Joe, welcome to the studio. Welcome to the program.
Glad to be here. Sorry for my delayed response. I was typing to Mr. Deo, just telling him which way to connect. And yeah, he will be joining us tonight, and it's going to be a very interesting show as there are a lot of things going on. A lot of things on his website. You can find some stories we're going to be talking about on standeo.com. There are one thing that really caught my eye there at his site was a first look inside the sinkhole that swallowed a Florida man. There is a video of the sinkhole, and you can see, go on the website and click on the link, and you can see the video of the bedroom where the man was swallowed by the sinkhole, and read the story of how his brother tried to save him. And they say the sinkhole is about 60 foot deep, and there's no sign of a body, a dresser, or the TV at the bottom of the hole.
I got to tell you, look, I remember a Twilight Zone episode. Folks, do you remember this? The old black and white Twilight Zone where there was a wall in a little girl's or a little child's room, and there was this third dimension or a different dimension. I shouldn't say third dimension, another dimension or a parallel universe where this girl would go into this wall, and the dad would be trying to grab the girl, and it was a tremendous Twilight Zone episode for you Twilight Zone fans, the black and white Twilight Zone, of course. But that's what it sounds like, and with every passing day, are we not seeing signs in the heavens and signs on the earth and signs everywhere? Hey, things are changing. Things are changing rapidly, and of course, Mr. Deo is, holy cow. I mean, you talk about a man that has a great track record for things like tracking earthquakes, for, I don't want to say predicting earthquakes, but using scientific evaluation methods to provide earthquake windows, and his accuracy rate is stunning. Of course, Mr. Deo is the author of The Cosmic Conspiracy, a book that we have here in our library, and it never leaves our office.
While you're looking for that book, why don't you disconnect and reconnect? Some people say they hear echoes. Some people say you sound like you're in a tunnel, which, if you weren't on video, I would say you were, because usually you are in your little cave over there. But No, hopefully there's no sound problems.
No,
And if there is,
is,
you jump off and jump back on, and I'll do the same when you're done if we still have those issues. Before we bring Stan on, and while you're trying to fix your problems, there was a 2,000-plus-year-old synagogue destroyed in Damascus. The holiest Jewish site in Syria, a 2,000-plus-year-old synagogue in Damascus, has been looted and burned. Its roof also has been blown off. It is believed that the Jabbar synagogue, one of the world's oldest, was built atop a cave where the prophet Elijah once hid from persecution. It is one of the earliest historical mentions of the synagogue can be found in the Talmud. According to Israel Radio, the rebels claim that the Syrian government looted the synagogue before burning it to the ground. Meanwhile, the government alleged that the rebels had burned down the synagogue. It also has been claimed that the Zionist agents stole historic artifacts from the holy site as part of a planned operation. And with that, I think we have Mr. Deo on with us. And I don't know, Dad, are you back? I hear the voice. Good evening, Mr. Deo. How are you doing?
Good, Joe. How are things over in your part of the world?
They are very well. We are having some sound difficulties with my dad and waiting for him to jump back on, and I hear him. And
I'm on.
Yeah. Okay.
How does this sound? Does it sound all right? All right.
That sounds all right to me. Yep.
It's great to hear you. It's great to see you. It's great to talk with you. Ladies and gentlemen, new to the program, Stan, we're picking up new listeners all of the time. In the event anyone has not heard of Stan Deo, of course, his website is standeo.com. That's DEYO, standeo.com. Author, internationally acclaimed author of The Cosmic Conspiracy, well-known physicist, speaker, and a man who worked undercover for the FBI and is held above top secret security clearances. Just want to welcome you to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report again. Great to have you, sir.
Thanks, Doug. So what's happening today?
Well, that's what we want to find from you. Holy cow.
Yeah. We've had an uptick in earthquakes we've been talking about on our show. I was looking at your earthquake map, your forecast earthquake map on your site here, and looking to see what areas or hotspots you had highlighted and to watch for. We see a lot of activity in Japan, and I guess the first question I would like to ask Mr. Deo is, are we in danger of seeing another big earthquake in Japan? And the reason I ask is because we are 2 years plus away from Fukushima, and we are seeing stories of some very radioactive measurements being taken from fish, from water in that area. And we know reactor number 4 is still being held up by wooden planks pretty much. And that is in danger of collapse. What do you see with Japan and their recent seismic increase in activity?
Well, it certainly is increasing. Back at the end of March, on the 31st of March, I circled an area there in the North Island, but close to Fukushima, which is building up, and we've been seeing signs of that today with the earthquakes that have been occurring. The latest 5.0 was about, I forget, about 4 o'clock this afternoon or something like that. I have to check and see. Our time, Mountain Standard, to be about 1 o'clock, just before 1 o'clock this afternoon. But there's been a whole lot of activity in Japan, in the middle of the 2 main islands and up to the north. But there's also been activity in the last 2 or 3 days on the southwestern side of the whole Ring of Fire, up above New Zealand, near Fiji, in the Philippines, and New Guinea. New Guinea's had a couple of really good ones. And then some right out in the middle of the ocean between Japan and New Guinea, in an area that's really not normally populated, 5.4 earthquake there. And in Burma, there's been 3 in the last 4 days, significant ones. These are like Victor 5s or better. But we're also seeing here in the, what's this, the 4 days ago, we saw Richter 5.1 at the bottom of the Juan de Fuca plate on the west coast of the United States. And that's not a clever thing. There's been a number of smaller earthquakes throughout California south of that, but the whole area of the Ring of Fire is busy. All the way over into South America on the west coast, from Chile all the way up into Central America, there have been 4.5s and 5s all up along that area in the last 4 or 5 days. So I'm seeing a lot of heavy earthquake, bigger magnitudes, primarily on the southwest and west side, which does include Japan, of the Ring of Fire in the Pacific. But it's building up, and increasingly so, over on the right side and sneaking up toward California and Oregon and Washington State. And in fact, even there's some up in the Aleutians that are starting to get a bit bigger and more numerous. I think there's something at play here, earthquake-wise. By the way, is my video coming across to you now?
Yes, it is. I do see your lovely face, and me and my dad are both on video. And I will send you.
Is it a still or is it a live video feed?
I'm seeing your fingers wiggling there, so you've got a live feed.
Well, how is that? I'm seeing just the still. How is that going on?
You're watching through Skype?
Yeah.
If you go to the website that broadcasts the stream, which we'll post in the chat, you can find the live video.
And once again, I just want to remind everyone, we are streaming in high-def video compliments of the Christians United Broadcasting Network, and that live video stream is www.thehagmanandhagmanreport.com. And once again, our guest is internationally acclaimed author Stan Deyo, standeyo.com. There's a link on HomelandSecurityUS.com to both Mr. Deyo's website and his books, the extensive library of books that he's written. So definitely check that out. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, well, we were talking about there. Oh, go ahead, Stan.
No, we were talking about earthquakes. Did you want something specifically on that, Joe?
Well, yeah, I was going to continue with a question. I saw the article you had on the earthquake shake-up parts of the New Madrid and other counties around it. There was a few earthquakes today, a 2.7 and a 2.8, both one in Arkansas, and I'm not sure what state the other one was. It was very close.
It's
and we have
Southern Missouri.
Okay, Southern Missouri. And I've also, I don't know if this is connected to have you heard of the oil spill that is going on in Arkansas right now? That is really getting
No,
yes.
I didn't even know there's one in Arkansas. How do you have an
I'll
oil spill there? Is there a rig?
I will get you the link to that story. I was just reading it before the show. But there is a leak or a spill or some kind of big oil event that happened in Arkansas. And there is a no-fly zone that was put over top of this. And I found it interesting that it was right near the earthquake area, and Arkansas being a hotspot for the New Madrid. And here it is. FAA issues no-fly zone over Arkansas oil spill. And I will put the link in the Skype chat for this. And there was also another link that showed video and pictures of this damage that was done before they gave a blackout, a military blackout, or a airplane blackout.
Why would they execute a no-fly zone over an oil spill?
Not exactly sure. Just trying to figure that out over, like I said, over about the last half hour before the show starts. Arkansas's tar sands oil.
Yeah, and there's really no reason, as far as we can tell, for this no-fly zone. I mean, it's not adjacent to or on any type of sensitive property or anything like that. So we're not sure, and we've got a couple of outstanding inquiries, but have received nothing back at this point.
All right, I'm just
well, it's news to a few of us.
If I can get any news feeds on that as well.
Yeah.
No-fly zone.
Yeah.
Technology, where would we be without it? Let's see. Okay.
Yeah, so we have an oil spill going on in Alaska, or Arkansas, along with an earthquake from 2.7, 2.8 earthquake in this same area today, just not too long ago, only 0.3 kilometers deep, which I do not understand the depth and the I know the deeper the earthquake, the more force it can have, but the real shallow earthquakes, they boggle my mind. I don't understand what causes earthquakes at such a shallow depth,
I think
other
it's,
than something man-made.
Well, I don't know. It could be, but it could also be that this is part of the stretching of the surface of the Earth that I think is starting, has been for the last few months, causing earthquakes and sinkholes and large kind of rips in the surface, of the Earth. What do you call them? Like just splits, like dry ground, except they're big.
Okay.
They're not really an earthquake. They're just, like a large gash that forms. I'm getting a feed here from Google News that they've got the no-fly zone in place, so that no aircraft are flying within that area while Exxon uses their helicopters to evacuate crew. But this no-fly zone has been in there from April the 1st. So you'd think they'd have all their crew out by then, but anyway, so who knows?
Yeah. It sounds pretty odd.
Yeah, not something we had in the talking list of issues we wanted to discuss tonight, but it came up, so I figured I would open up and ask and see if you knew or had any extra information on this, since information was scarce concerning the Arkansas oil spill. But one thing I really wanted to get into tonight, and I'm not sure how much information my dad knows about this aside from what we've talked about on the show, is this comet Ison seems to be making a lot of news for other reasons than it being a comet. I'm seeing reports that it is traveling with other bodies, celestial bodies. Seeing other reports that this is what some people would call Planet X or Nibiru. We know that from their NASA's own reporting that this thing will be almost as bright, if not brighter, than the full moon if it makes its way around the sun and the tail gets illuminated by that travel. Do you know, Mr. Deo, if this comet Ison A is traveling with companions, and B, can you or have you heard anything on the authenticity of how bright this will be? Will this be like a second full moon in our night sky if this is plays out right?
Well, it should be bright. Certainly, I don't know whether it'll be as bright as the second moon, but I have not had any credible sources tell me that Ison has companions with it. I have probably seen the same sort of rumor market that you have about it having debris or, a constellation of little bits and pieces following it. It's highly possible because it is a sun grazer, and they do get loosened up quite a bit the closer they get to the sun and throw off stuff. I don't know. Where did you hear this? I mean, was it a credible source?
I can't say that it was credible. It was more, I would say, amateur astronomers taking pictures and photographs with their telescopes and putting their findings up on YouTube without having any real scientific backgrounds. It could be anything from anomalies in the camera to other moving bodies, or even just effects from the timed photo shots. What are those called when the time delay photoshops? Time lapse. Thank you. So
I don't know. It'd certainly be of interest to know, but again, its path is so far from the Earth, that I think probably Mars would be the only one that suffers some of the attendant stuff traveling with Ison. As far as I can remember, I haven't checked the orbit in the last week or so, but I really didn't see it being a major issue to the Earth until maybe, next year sometime, some of the lagging debris. But even that seems rather low probability.
Okay. That's interesting. While we're on the topic of rogue space meteors, asteroids, things that are, coming our way what called near Earth objects, we've seen NASA come out and say, there could be a possible collision with a meteor coming towards Earth, and they need money to get new technology to better search for these objects and defend against them. Has there been any talk you've heard about unknown or undocumented possible dangers when it comes to space rocks hitting Earth or coming near Earth?
Nothing that I haven't talked about with you before. Even though I live close to Colorado Springs and Space Watch, is there, but I don't have any people talking to me from there these days. My contact in there is long gone now. So I can't tell you if they're holding back information. I know people like to know that, but this spate of small meteors and flashes and booms that we've seen since the one that exploded over Russia here a few weeks back does indicate to me that we're passing through some sort of a debris field, sparsely populated, but that we may expect some more flashes and booms in the near future. I don't know if to detect these kind of things, whether it be NASA or Space Watch or whoever, they need to have infrared telescopes in the northern and southern hemisphere, and they need to have big bucks to keep tracking that stuff. A large number of potential spots out there that are very weak, either in the visible or the infrared range, as far as what you can determine on your telescope. And it's a big job to scan millions of little bright spots out there, put them into your computer, let it say, okay, this one is shifted, that one shifted, and then try to match it to known plots. When you get something smaller than 30 meters in diameter, which a few of those can be pretty nasty if they hit us, not earth-shattering, but still, they can cause damage to cities and people. But you can't see those; they just won't resolve without something emitting light or heat from them. So I do sympathize with the governments trying to keep track of these things. They know that by mass there would be probably 4,000 or 5,000 that are not located, logged in, and tracked. So they're going to be surprised as often as we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years, where they say, "Oh, that was close. One just passed between us and the moon today. Didn't see that one coming." I joke about it, but they really just don't have the technology to pick up something that's not emitting enough light for our sensors to log. Sad thing. I think that we ought to be concerned with some of the bigger ones and how we would mitigate the problem with them. Either with a cushion effect nuclear detonation, or a long-term orbit change by locking a rocket onto it or several, so that you can gradually move its orbit to get out of the way of the Earth. For those big ones, they pretty much located and logged those in. But the smaller ones, like that one over Russia, I mean, the number of those could do some real hurt to cities and people here.
Yeah, I mean, should we be worried that really no one's at the helm watching about this? I mean, it just seems like whenever we hear about any potential for a strike, it's always like within days, or we just found out about this. Why isn't NASA taking charge of this? What happened to NASA? It seems like we went from a leading agency sending men to the moon, and now what do we have? We've got. I'm not even sure what they do anymore.
Well, to be honest, I'm not either. But understand that, like Space Command and NORAD, they're tasked with particularly tracking things that might be of danger to the United States and to the constellations of satellites that we have around the planet that the United States is responsible for. But understand there are at least 5,000 pieces of stuff orbiting the planet that mankind's put up there, in addition to all these potential small little bodies out there. And it takes large computing power and very high resolution sensors to constantly track, little tiny weak spots of light out there to see if they are incoming. And it takes a while to calculate the orbit, sometimes a few months of repeated sightings of where it's moved to point A to point B, point C. And then you can calculate a pretty close orbit from that. But even that requires stereo photography to calculate its orbit accurately. I'm not saying that NASA should be doing this. Actually, I think Space Command and NORAD are tasked with that, and NASA's involvement would be more to mitigating the situation once it's detected.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Would we be able to trust Space Command or any branch of the government giving us information on potential near-Earth objects or trouble from space?
Yeah, I've always wondered that too, because if something is coming in and they know they can't do anything about it or whatever, can we rely on being told the truth on something like this, or?
No, you can't, and I'm of two minds about that. I've often played the mental game of saying, well, let me sit in their seat. And I have been in Space Command and talked to people there and see how they work a bit of these things. It's like predicting earthquakes. In Italy recently, they sentenced several geologists for not telling that an earthquake was coming. And at the best of times, you can say, okay, tensions are building up, volcano may erupt, an earthquake may rip apart, Italy or whatever, but they're not sure. And if they call a false alert, then they get blamed for that. If they don't call it, they get blamed for that. So it's a bad time to be a geologist. And the same kind of thing applies to the astronomy involved in detecting, near-Earth object threats. If I were in charge and I saw that there was one coming real close, in fact, it may impact, then it depends on how much time I had to warn the population. And I would do it, if it were something that might cause panic and anarchy, I would do it through unofficial leaks over a period of time from when I detected the incoming to when it might hit, so that people could, in the know, out there, or think they're in the know, and the just general population could hear rumors of this, and pretty strong rumors from reasonably credible sources, but it would be a slow boil that would go out into the community to get people preparing. That's the way I would do it, rather than just coming out over, the local TV channel and saying, "Oh, by the way, let's see, what time is it here? Look, bend over and kiss it goodbye."
Yeah.
That's just insane.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of guesswork involved in this, and I do try to play devil's advocate and get on both sides of the fence, government and then the general population, and see how I would release the information, or whether I would or would not. And to just put it right out there in your face and say duck is not clever. I would do, as I suspect is happening, and I think, Joe, you're aware of this process, that credible leaks in the underground come to us, and we disseminate that, and people who listen to us and think, and are, preparing, they will help the community to mitigate what comes after the impact as best as possible. I just think I would do it the same way.
Yeah, I had talked to a doctor who had to give someone some bad news. In fact, my friend, a personal care doctor, and it was on a Friday, and he said, we're just going to wait until Monday, because really, let her enjoy the weekend. And so I understand that mindset, I suppose, and I understand that, what are you going to do? You're in a position where, what can you do at that point? But boy, that'd be a tough call to make. I mean, it'd be a tough call all around. having that information weighing on you like that.
Look, I've said this before. There was a documentary done on the geologists over in the Philippines that were watching Pinatubo volcano. Now, they were getting earthquake reports from underneath the volcano, certain size, certain harmonic tremors, et cetera, et cetera. And for 2 or 3 days, they were trying to figure out, do we call an evacuation or not? And they were not wanting to cause panic in the community and cost businesses money. They did not want the Air Force Base, the American Air Force Base, to have to evacuate people unless it was necessary. And there were cameras filming a lot of their situation live. And their big problem was, if we don't, we may miss the thing, and a lot of people die. If we do, and it doesn't happen, we're in trouble. And so finally they said, we're going to bite the bullet and put our jobs on the line, and we'll say, okay, it's going to go evacuate. So that was a real, like, almost like a reality show inside scientists trying to decide whether to tell you that they think something's going to happen or not. And we just have to respect that. They're people just like us.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed.
I saw on your website, and maybe you might be a much better person to explain this than we are. The genetically modified foods, Monsanto. Obama recently signed into law the Monsanto Protection Act. What ramifications are we going to see as consumers of the food, and possibly, to your knowledge, what ramifications will the United States agriculture industry that is separate from these big government agribusinesses, what kind of fallout are they going to see from this legislation passing and becoming law?
Well, I haven't read the legislation in detail at all, but I know that Monsanto is just such a huge, like monster, in essence, to the farming community in a lot of ways, because with their modified seeds, if you're a farmer out here and you didn't want to use any of their seeds, you wanted to use your own seeds, and you held back seeds from your crop every year so that you could, sow them, and you didn't want the modified stuff. You wanted just the normal, old-timey seeds that you were using for whatever crop you're growing. And Monsanto plants a bunch of their genetically modified stuff right next to you, and the wind blows some of it over into your property. Then they will sue you for growing their seed without their permission. And this has happened many times over. Small farmers can't fight the suit, and they lose their farms, or a lot of money, because Monsanto has forced them to, in essence, buy their seed or pay the big fine. It's just, I don't like the GMOs. In the long term, they put the control of seeds into a corporate structure, and you can't grow the seeds without kowtowing to them. This is just not right. I mean, the next thing they're going to do is charge us for rainfall on our property. I mean, this is just madness.
They've already made it illegal to collect rainwater to certain degrees in certain communities, and it is. We're moving towards that Agenda 21. All lands and resources belong to the government, whether you own the property or not. I've been told, and it's been published all over the internet with Army documents about how they want to remap the United States, how they want to move the population from certain resource-heavy centers to, big population centers, and get them away from the resources, to the point that they have most of the country cordoned off to where they won't have access to any of these lands proposed under the new Agenda 21 plan. It's really crazy how they have just taken over everything, including the food business. And while we're on the topic of food, and going back to Fukushima, there have been, I think we talked about this on the phone the other day, the seal die-offs that are happening, and the radiation. Have you guys noticed anybody monitoring or seeing an increased levels of radiation on the West Coast, in the Pacific Ocean, in the fish in the ocean, aside from what has been being reported on the internet and mainstream news?
Not really. I mean, Holly she has about 100 or more different news sources that she uses on the internet. And other than that, we don't have any other sources telling us the information. We access the same kind of data that you can as far as radiation counts in various cities across the United States. And quite honestly, with the debris now on the other side of Hawaii, heading this way from Fukushima, I know that a lot of the fish and stuff have been swimming through those polluted waters, have made it into our food chain. And I, for one, am not too keen on eating any seafood these days.
That's a heck of a thing to say, but every time I eat fish, I think, where did this come from? And I guess that really doesn't even matter at this point where it comes from, I suppose. Why aren't we hearing, Stan, why aren't we really hearing anything more about Fukushima? I mean, obviously it's still an ongoing problem, but I know the politics of it, but maybe a better question is this. How much did Fukushima affect us? Here, we'll start here in the States and then globally, outside of that, of course, outside of the island of Japan. How much did Fukushima affect us?
That's hard for me to tell. I mean, you can look at the pollution of the food chain. You can look at the impact to consumer patterns, buying patterns of seafood, whether that's changed. Did it change after the Exxon catastrophe in the Gulf and a lot of the surfactants that were into the food chain? Did people's buying patterns change and hurt businesses that way? I suspect it did. Sea life, dolphins, sharks, a lot of fish that are making it in the food chain in the western side of the Pacific, I'm sure, are not healthy. But for us over here, what do we import? I mean, as I say, I personally just don't want to eat too much seafood at all. I mean, you don't know where it comes from. Yeah. It's getting to the point where you want to depend on your freeze-dried stores and your canned tuna fish from 5-10 years ago that might be safer.
Very true.
I'm serious. I mean,
I agree with you. No, I totally agree with you because it's we can't. Certainly, we're not being told the truth about anything, as far as I can tell. Every question I ask any of my through normal channels, I'm not getting any type of reasonable responses. All of the information that we're getting is under the table, or through our sources like you, and it's quite different than what we're hearing in the mainstream media. So if you can't trust the answers you're receiving, then I'm right there with you.
How funny would it be? I mean, it's getting to the point where you think, well, look, we're going shopping. Can I borrow the radiation detector? We'll just run it over everything we buy at the store.
Yeah, exactly.
Get this. Today we found out something from Walmart where Holly went and buy some hamburger meat the other day. Went to mix up a recipe. It called for a pound of the stuff, and she had a bit left over, and she just checked the package, and she paid for 2.5, was it 60? A little over 2.25 pounds worth of beef, and there was only it was short of that by 9 ounces. And you got to wonder how much of your packaging is saying one thing, and if you took it home and weighed it, you'd be getting less value for your money.
Wow.
We called them. She did. Called the manager of the store and complained bitterly that, this is not the done thing. I looked at the package; it was there. I weighed the meat; it wasn't there.
I would bet that happens a lot more often than people would ever think. Anything to save a dollar, anything to try to make a profit where there isn't room to make one, shortchanging the customers, things like that. It's really a sad reality the society we live in, and how degraded it's become.
And Stan, I'm sure you remember. I remember going into grocery stores not grocery stores, butcher shops. Well, grocery stores, and having the butcher weigh the meat right in front of you. And the joke always was, well, get your thumb off the scale or whatever. But now it's just totally it's a total different type of environment we're living in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking seriously. We've got one of these little portable scales. I was thinking, here, Holly, take that in next time you go in there, and right in front of them, weigh the meat and look at them, with distrust. Keep them honest. The guy said,
That's not a bad
the
idea.
manager said, we'll give you your money back. And she said, no, I don't want my money back. I want you to behave yourself. Unbelievable. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. No, it's ridiculous. Well, Stan, looking at your website, you cover so much. And Joe and I were talking before the show about, we're wondering what you're focused on these days. Obviously, you've got the earthquake maps or the earthquake map, but what are you really focused on? What are you looking at as potentially a life changing event, perhaps in the near future here? What concerns you the most right now?
Well, one of the things I'm wrestling with is how I will react when they knock down my door for my weapons and stuff that I paid hard-earned money for. Will I shoot somebody and kill them before they kill me? That's uppermost in my mind these days. And certainly the economy is failing, by leaps and bounds, and watching Cyprus and the terrible problems that the people are having with their savings and their check accounts being hit by the government with taxes to pay for the government's problems, the bank's problems. I can see that coming here, quite soon. If the Middle East flares, which I think it will, that's sometime soon, but early summer, if not before. I expect any tick of the clock to see the Middle East erupt and the government control of us here in this country to go absolutely insane. People being locked up like they did in World War II. The Japanese, if you were Japanese, you were the enemy, and you got locked up, and your house and possessions were confiscated, and some of them got their stuff back, some didn't. We're going to see that here for people that are like you and I, trying to prepare people and warn what's going on. We're going to be the enemy of the state, and I am thinking that fairly shortly they'll lock us all up.
You're not too far off on your thinking there, Mr. Dale, as I think of the same things. And not only that, I'm reading the documents where they say they're going to do as much. And if we can, during the second hour, if we can get into just a little bit of preparedness discussion as to some basic preparations people can take with very low money. I know that is your wife's area of expertise times 10. I know she is the world's foremost expert on preparing with her encyclopedia, Dare to Prepare, that is probably one of the best survival books ever published. I do want to hit on a question from a listener, and they ask if there is anything to your knowledge new with the Hopi prophecy that is relevant to today or now.
I don't. I haven't heard anything new from the guys down there. In the last 3 or 4 years, we've certainly been in touch with people on the Hopi Nation. They're just preparing for the non-people, the non-Indian people, the Anglos and Hispanics that have moved in and taken over, the United States. They're preparing for them to have a civil war, a multifaceted civil war. And the last discussions I had with the Hopi about this was, I asked the obvious question is, well, how soon do you see this happening? And their answer is soon. And it's been soon for 8 or 9 years that we've been dealing with. Well, in fact, even longer than that, probably 13, 14 years now. But you do see the signs of civil unrest. It can be tracked back to so many things that this administration is doing to us. It's just not funny. I mean, if an administration wanted to create civil chaos and civil war to justify, martial law, I don't think a government could do any more than what this administration has done to purposely destroy us. We've got economic separators, the corporations, the ultra-rich people against the rest of us that struggle to survive every day and to pay our taxes to a behemoth that is just wasting it on bailouts and other nameless things. And you've got just catering to the illegal immigrants here, giving them driver's license and free medical care. And we used to joke about this in Australia. The Indonesians were being treated the same way. They'd come in, they'd give them a house to live in. If they were pregnant, they'd take care of their baby birth and bills and stuff like that. And it's almost the point where you want to go offshore and come back in as an illegal migrant to Australia because you got everything freebies. And we're seeing that here now with the illegal migration from South America, Mexico, and et cetera, into the United States. This is madness. We're having to pay for all that, and there's a set order for people to get into this country. That should be followed. It's not saying we don't want people to immigrate here. We want them to follow the rules and be like we are, speak our language, follow our rules, work and pay taxes, and they're not doing that. And this government is just putting a wall between us and them to create this friction. It is such a disheartening situation. I watched it coming, and if you don't do anything, you're darned, and if you do something, you're darned. The government's going to get you either way. They are just absolutely killing us.
I think the term illegal alien is now illegal to use. From what I'm reading here in some of these articles, they're talking
That's
about,
right.
changing it to undocumented. Or Jay Leno made a joke calling them undocumented Democrats. And I saw some other terms thrown around there to get away from the illegal. If you remember, there was a senator who actually said, "I would prefer, or please do not use the term illegal alien in my or in this hearing, during this hearing, when referring to the amnesty and what they wanted to do and what they're trying to do, pushing through this reform with immigration." Another subject I'd like to get into, if we can, we see all these articles coming out about these new superbugs, this meningitis outbreak, the H1N1 virus, these new viruses that are antibiotic resistant. I guess you probably wouldn't know firsthand for sure, but are these, especially the bugs that are resistant to antibiotics, would these more likely be produced in a laboratory, or are these more likely to occur in nature? And I guess as nature continues to change with Fukushima and all the things we're seeing happening, it does seem like it's more feasible or more likely that it could be Earth-made. But the uptick in these viruses, the amount of viruses that are being named and they're warning us against, seems to be increasing by a lot. And just wanted to know from your opinion if it would be a more likely scenario that they're man-made, laboratory-made.
Well, I think back to that series, The Stand, in the book, about a military-made virus wipes out, most of the world, and people of a certain genetic makeup were able to survive the virus. But there are a number of factors that you have to consider when you're looking at pandemics. First of all, our own resistance to disease, our immunity, is weakened by our diet, by our GMO foods. Secondly, it is weakened, our immunity system is weakened by using too many antibiotics over periods of time. And our immunity is also affected by coronal mass ejections and radiations from the sun hitting us. We have had a number of CMEs and things like that, but our magnetic field is weakening, so we're getting more ultraviolet and some other radiations in that we haven't had before. And this does, due to a French study, this does weaken our immunities, and it does make you more irritable, and divorce rates go up and crime rates go up during these sunspot max periods. But in this grand solar maximum, it's going to be even worse. So that can be affecting our reported outbreaks of these things, where we might have ordinarily, survived it if we were having the food we had 100 years ago and the magnetic field strength we had 100 years ago, and we didn't have the air traffic and food imports across all over the world daily. I mean, there's so many ways that these diseases can vector to us, and so many ways that our immunity can be affected, that it doesn't have to be man-made to break out suddenly. The Bible does tell us that we're going to see a breakout of diseases in this last days of this age, anyway.
Well, it seems like we're in the last days, at least from my perspective. Wow. I mean, with all the earth changes and everything we're seeing on the political scene, you mentioned something about, and I know about the gun issue, and I know you're in Colorado, and I know we're kind of jumping around here, but it's a little bit laid back tonight. Do you see this actually coming down to the gun situation, the gun confiscation, the gun laws, these oppressive draconian legislations? But do you actually see it coming down to a door kicking in situation? And I know that's kind of it calls for speculation, but on balance here, are we going to see just a few people? Do you think, in your estimation, maybe some of the more higher profile people just being made examples of, or are we going to see? I mean, if you remember back 1995, before Oklahoma City, everyone was blaming talk radio or Oklahoma City on talk radio. Another incident with a gun, perhaps, to really create this animus toward firearms. I mean, maybe this is an unfair question, but do you see us getting to the point where we're actually going to be having to fight off people at our door wanting to take our guns away?
A few high-profile people for sure. That'll be media-worthy. This gun confiscation thing is an issue with me because, like you, I'm out there kind of in the public eye protesting against it, and so they'll make an example of us. As far as everyone, I think what is happening is that this gun confiscation issue is only one of several things that they're putting upon the American public to force revolution, civil disobedience, and riots. It's only one of the things. I mean, if you are going to charge people more taxes, which they're going to do and are doing, that irritates people. And if people are unemployed and can't get work, that irritates people. And if we're giving undocumented workers, money and driver's licenses and our own money that we didn't want to give to them anyway, that irritates people. And, the raise of the prices in the supermarkets of the food, these things are multifaceted stabs at us to force us to say, I've had enough. They want us to rebel so they can have the martial law. But even with the Hopi say, I don't think this will last long, because once we start to fight amongst ourselves, that then gives Russia, China, and some of the other Middle Eastern nations that may be allied to Russia, the excuse to invade America. All in all, they're wanting to just divide us and conquer us. And this is the thin end of the wedge, what they're pushing at us now. And the Hopi said this would happen. We would have a terrible, terrible civil war, multifaceted here in the United States. And in the wake of that, the divided house would be invaded by Russia, China, and Middle East, and that they would stay for a short time and then leave for whatever reason, perhaps because many of the cities will be uninhabitable because of disease and radiation. Maybe some nukes go off or whatever. The good news is the Hopi say, good news from my point of view is the Hopi say that the Hopi and the American Indians that survive will be heading into Colorado, into the Four Corners region, to rebuild a new nation, a hybrid nation of the people, the Indian people, and then the Europeans and others that are left after the Civil War is over and the invasion is over. It's really a very depressing view. And I can sit here watching it happen. I knew this was going to happen before I even came back to the States. And knowing that long ago, I'm doing what the good Lord told me to do in dream visions. And believe me, I did not want to come back here, but that's because I know what's about to happen here.
Oh, Stan, you said something interesting there. And I tell people that, and I firmly believe that we were all born for this place and this time in history in this place, and we're supposed to be here. You came back. It sounds like you've got a purpose to fulfill. If you don't mind expanding on that a little bit, what do you mean by that?
Well, Ollie and I have been doing that since before we left Australia, but we could reach further, faster, and do more things as far as helping people get ready for what is coming, spiritually and physically, by being here in the States. But I was actually shown the exact house inside of it and told the name of a valley I would see out the window of my library there, Beulah Valley, in a dream vision in Australia. And it was definitely strong and put me here for this reason. I had other dream visions which showed me being like a news gatherer, a watchman, if you would, for several hundred other watchmen who would then go to their people in the United States and tell them, things have started, here's what you need to do. And I've put that dream vision up on the website under Dreams and Visions. That's one of our links on our website. But I think I've done, well, as far as I know, I've done what I was supposed to be doing by informing people and teaching them how to take care of themselves and what is important in these times. There are others doing it. I'm just doing, from my particular perspective, from a kind of an engineering physicist type perspective, nuts and bolts type, no BS type reporting. And I've helped a lot of people who are watchmen who've said, look, what do you think about this report or that report? Is it real or is it, photoshopped or, is it misleading? And so in that respect, I've been serving my fellow watchmen by doing quality control on the news that they're getting from, dubious sources, and in fact, sometimes from official sources. But I guess that's what it is. I mean, other than that, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, well, you're doing a good job as a watchman, certainly from our point of view, and both you and your wife. And folks, I just want to say this: if you haven't had the opportunity yet to order Dare to Prepare, Holly Deo's got a tremendous book. It answers all of your questions with respect to preparation. In fact, I didn't know how much I didn't know.
Do we have it down here?
We don't. It's in my other library.
I'll grab it during the break.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry for that, but so folks, definitely Dare to Prepare, and even Prudent Places USA from standeo.com. Unbelievable work. And Stan, your book, The Cosmic Conspiracy, you speak of the Illuminati and
that's a fantastic book.
I mean, you get into so many different things.
It puts every aspect of the New World Order, to the One World Religion, to the people behind it, to the Bible prophecy, Earth change, as we were seeing, puts it all together in one awesome book.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely people add to your library. And of course, off of HomelandSecurityUS.com, those listening, you can link right to, or go right to standeo.com. And of course, we've got a link to his book page as well. But Stan, we're up against the top of the hour break. Well, momentarily here. I've got a question from a listener. How do you, and this is kind of an interesting question. I lost it. I'm sorry. I just closed it and I can't find it. It's buried.
Well, what we'll do is we'll go to break. And Stan, if you could, can you disconnect from the call and hit join call again? We're getting some people telling us that the sound quality isn't the greatest, and we found if you hang up and reconnect, it fixes the problem for whatever reason.
It actually kind of zaps the squirrels and the hamsters and the wheels that run the mechanisms of the Hagmann and Hagmann report.
Is my video feed causing a problem as well, or
no,
not
at all. No, it's just one of those weird, odd things that, especially when there's a strain on things. But no, the video and the audio is not really a problem. It's just we just find that when you disconnect and reconnect, the problems go away. So if you don't mind doing that, we really appreciate that.
You want me to hang up at the break and then ring back in to see you be in?
Yeah. There
should be a join call option after you hang up. Just hit the join the call again, and everything should be fine.
And during the break, I'll make sure I'll get the squirrel feed and feed the hamsters. Folks are listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on the third day of April 2013. We're up against the top of the hour break. We'd like to welcome in the listeners, of course, in Mississauga, Ontario, Santa Rosa, California, and Everett, Washington, who emailed me before the show and said, hey, we're listening and we love Stan Deo. So that's a great thing. Folks, we're right back after these messages. Our home base, HomelandSecurityUS.com. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me is Joe Hagmann. Stay with us.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have a long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the Internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eilena Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
You better wake up fast and listen to this, America. The Obama campaign has launched attack squads disguised as truth teams dedicated to intimidating and silencing all political dissent carried over the Internet that criticizes the Marxist Obama. Truth squads specifically focused on covering up Obama's endless trail of lies, corruption, and subversion, and using the Gestapo power of our own government to police and censor the Internet and shut down websites that dare to carry the real truth about Obama's Marxist coup. Remember the names of these Gestapo-style agencies that work right there in your neighborhood. KeepingHisWord.com, KeepingGOPHonest.com, and AttackWatch.com. KGB, SS, and Gestapo-style police-state gangster organizations at work to silence the important voices of patriot dissent, some of which have already been shut down by Obama's orders. Adolf Hitler would have been proud. We're the 21st century Tea Party patriots.
You want answers? I think I can tell you want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of this Wednesday, April 3rd edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, as we were joined by our very special guest, Stan Deyo. Ladies and gentlemen, go to his website, standeo.com. I will post it in the chat room again, as it is a excellent, and bookmark this site, as it is an excellent source for real-time information, whether it be political, economical, or earth geological events. Bookmark it and check it every day, as we do, because there is so much going on in the world. It is so hard to keep track of what is important, and so many sites we have in the alternative media like Drudge Report and all these other sites, they seem to all be missing certain aspects or elements of things that are going on. And one thing that Mr. Deo's site has is all of that together. The spiritual things, the earth changes, the economic and political goings on in the world. And definitely visit the site daily and check his earthquake forecast maps, as they have been very accurate. And especially as of late, they have been pretty much predicting where the next bigger earthquakes are coming from. And Mr. Stan Deyo is a highly respected PhD?
No, just Stan the man.
Stan the man. And the sound is great now. Sounds so much better for whatever
Sorry
reason.
about that. Didn't know what was happening.
No, it's on our end. We have these little squirrels. But anyway, we picked up some news stations here at the top of the second hour. Stan, for those new listeners, standeo.com. Stan Deyo is our very special guest, and definitely you've got to pick up, folks, Dare to Prepare and The Cosmic Conspiracy, among others. I got to tell you, two of the best books. I would not have them. I mean, I would. They don't leave my library. I don't lend them out to anyone. We talked last hour about a number of different things, including but not limited to the earth changes, the politics of everything going on. Stan, one thing that I got from your book, talking about the Luciferian globalist agenda. Now, I know that people will say, "Oh, Doug, you're just absolutely tinfoil. It's wrapped too tight around your head." In studying this, I noticed that, or found that, obviously April is a key month for these kinds of people for their operations. April 1st being the new year, and of course they're following the Babylonian calendar. You see anything taking place here? And I'm not asking you to predict anything. I guess from a historical perspective, the globalists here that we've got pulling the strings, what do you see taking place? Do you see anything happening in the near term? I mean, we got Syria, we got North Korea. One of the listeners from Iowa wanted me to ask you about your take on North Korea. Domestically here, are we in trouble domestically from the threat of North Korea that comes from Kathy out of Iowa?
Well, I don't have any crystal ball on that. Certainly the government seems to be telling us that we need to worry about it. They're taking it seriously. They've sent over some F-22 Raptors or 23As. I'm not sure what they sent over, but anyway, to South Korea to be there should they need to strike North Korea. I'm kind of looking at it like this. That little dictator over there in North Korea is saber-rattling, and he may actually explode a device, do some kind of harm, maybe in Hawaii or something like that. And he may reach the West Coast. I doubt it. But basically, his country is so poor, they don't even have electric lights in a lot of the homes that run all the time. And so I think that probably what he's angling for is to poke the eye of the beast, America, and give up and take foreign aid, and his people will all be happy because they're eating better because the United States is paying for it, and that way he's in a win-win. It's costing us to buy him off like we've done a lot of other smaller nations, and there's a breaking point coming. But I think it's more his plan to fill his pockets and to keep his people happy at the expense of the United States. In some kind of an agreed settlement after some small attack on us. They just haven't really got the goods that they need to be a serious threat.
Jeff from South Carolina wants me to ask you about the potential for an EMP type of device here in the U.S., whether it be from North Korea, acting as a client nation state of China. Would that? I mean, I certainly that's possible. Do you see? Is that on your level of concern? Any level of concern for that?
Yeah, and I'm not putting it onto North Korea for that, although North Korea and Iran have been having behind-the-scenes discussions on access to nuclear weapons.
Right.
Whoever, whether it be the North Koreans or whether it be the Iranians or Hezbollah separately, whatever, all it's going to take is some sort of a little shipping vessel, a merchant vessel, in international waters off the United States, primarily off of the Atlantic coast, and several hundred miles out to sea, launch an EMP-type nuclear device. Now that would explode over the United States at an altitude of 200 or 300 miles, and that would so cripple our infrastructure electronically and power-wise that we'd be in the dark ages. 100 years ago, we'd be in instant chaos. Now that is going to be reasonably hard to stop if they're in close to our shores but still in international waters, and they launch one of these little surface-to-air missiles. Okay, you could get rid of a few of them, but depending on how many they launch and which ones are live, they could succeed in hitting us with an EMP strike. That would be a serious problem. And I do see that as a possibility to keep us out of the game in the Middle East when they strike Israel.
And Stan, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, that would take us more than just a little bit of time to recover from because of the fragility of our infrastructure, the lack of parts and what have you. I mean, we would be in a world of hurt for a long time. Fair statement?
Fair statement. We'd instantly fall into something like a Mad Max scenario, and we wouldn't get out of it in a year or two. I mean, even if the Chinese were agreeable to making new transformers for our power distribution, it would take 2 to 4 years to get some of them back up, remade and back over here, and a lot of money, with the dollar devaluing a lot more money then. It's not a healthy scenario at all.
Wow. Yeah, via Facebook, via the Hagmann and Hagmann report on Facebook, this is out of order. We're just getting pummeled with people who want to ask you all these questions. I don't know if you've got Hagmann report up on Facebook or not, but anyway, you're
I'll try to get it up. I've not. I do have a Facebook account.
No, I was just talking to Joe. I'm sorry, Stan.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, that's all right. But certainly you're welcome to do that. But there's concern by a young lady that's living on the West Coast, and obviously is taking a look at your earthquake map. But in the longer term, we'll say, and we understand how we understand your forecasting map. But what's your thoughts on an earthquake in the West Coast, California area here? In the next, 12 months. She's very concerned about the big one coming. Is what?
Well, and I think she should be. It may be a surprise to all of us. The sad part about the way I forecast the earthquakes is that there are certain types of earthquakes that my method will not see. I know I have a gut feeling from watching these things for like 15, 16 years now that there's something building up in the northwest of the United States from California up into the Juan de Fuca Plate, which will affect Washington State, Oregon, and Northern California for sure, and possibly all the way down to the Baja, the Baja is a very unstable area. It's widely known. But I expect something in the next 3 to 6 months to really start to express itself on the west coast of the United States. If you look at the earthquake maps from USGS today and just look at the last 7 days of earthquakes, you will see a lot of fat little earthquake circles, which means they were Richter 5 or better, on the western side of the Pacific and down into the southwestern side near Fiji and north of New Zealand, and over on the southeastern side of the Pacific, on the west coast of South America and up into the Central American area. If you've been watching my earthquake forecast for the last month, I've been drawing circles on the west coast of South America, and in the last 3 weeks, a lot of circles on Central America right up to southern Mexico. And these circles come because I'm seeing a constant signature of heavy earthquakes occurring in those areas. And there are 4s, 5s, and 6s and stuff like that starting to happen there now. But look at that earthquake map and you'll see that there's a void. From Southern California up to Alaska, there's not a lot of those heavy, fat circles. That means that there's smaller earthquakes, a lot of smaller ones, but no biggies. And this is a worry because that means the pressure is building up there, releasing on the other side of the Pacific, but not on our side. And we've known for, 10, 15, maybe 20 years that there was a huge pressure building in the Juan de Fuca plate off of the Oregon coast and North California coast and Washington coast. When it's going to release is, soon. And I think the next 6 months will be very telling in this. As best I can, I will tell people when I think it's getting serious. I will put arrows up, an alert message that says, hey, look, okay, I may be blowing smoke, but I think that this is going to happen. And I'm not going to lose my job if I make a mistake, but I might make a lot of people mad if I do. But
Right.
It's better for me to make the mistake and get people prepared and it doesn't happen than it is to sit back and say, oh, well, it looks like it might happen. I won't tell anybody because I might get embarrassed. I will say what I think. I always have. And, to that woman that asked the question, I think it's a good time to be getting very prepared. And I jokingly say to people in those areas on the West Coast, well, just be sure that when you go to sleep, you've got an inner tube inflated next to you so you can float out if something happens, I mean, I'm joking, but I think something really is building on the West Coast. Now, I'm on your Facebook page. How do I see what you're seeing that you wanted me to look at? Is there like a video feed on there or something?
No, actually, there was a question we received via and I'm not even sure, Stan, how this works, but through a personal messaging system.
Yeah, we was just referring to somebody posted a question on there to ask you, but
I think you covered it well.
Oh, I see that. I see that. Here it is. I got it. Yeah, it's the public post feeds, right?
Yeah,
right, Joe?
It says, would you ask Stan if he thinks an earthquake? Yeah, that's where you're seeing. Yep,
right.
That's right. And while you were talking about North Korea, you were talking about the possibility of an EMP, and I've heard that along with the theory that I don't know if you've heard of the Hanford nuclear plants in Washington, that there are leaks in 6 tanks there. I'm not sure how accurate that is and how, if that has gotten worse recently.
Holly is keeping track of a lot of that stuff, and there's probably 3 or 4 nuclear reactors that it is publicly known that they are in Fukushima type risk at the moment of, radiation and having meltdowns. And that's just the 4 that they're making public. She's been doing a lot of data gathering on the nuclear reactors across the United States over the last 3 months now then. And as you might suspect, it's kind of hard to get to some of the data because they don't want to publish it. But there's just been some insane decisions made in some of these reactors that are, likely to leak even more than they are now. And if you get a good shake in some of those areas, and they're placed in areas where they could be getting a good shake, it could be very serious for a lot of people. I just don't understand why they're dumping all this, why we went to nuclear power so rapidly and building up, spent fuel rods that there's no place to put them, and why they went over to Nevada, and they put a hold on the storage area there, and then they're saying, "Oh, we're going to reopen it now, and we'll go ahead and put nuclear waste there." But it's not enough to hold all of what we've got to dump on it. It'll take 20 or 30 years to get the new ones up, new storage areas up. It's absolute madness.
Yeah. No, I agree. I was watching a documentary on the Mothman from Point Pleasant, and they were talking about the TNT that they had stored in this area and how that leaked, and it caused all these deformations of different types of animals and all the problems that it did cause there. We see this happening, and with Fukushima, when that hydrogen explosion happened, we saw those spent fuel rods go. We saw all the storage pools that were being stored on top of the nuclear plants were basically blown into the atmosphere and into the water. We have a question here in chat. It says, will you ask Mr. Dale how close you are to publishing how to fabricate free energy devices? And I know this is something we talked about last time you were on, was the free energy.
Well. You asked me before what I was doing, Doug, and what I was concerned with here. And now that I've got past the taxes filing portion of this year and all the headaches that go with that, I have been working on developing two types of alternate energy. I'm a long way from being able to tell people this is how you do it, this is the safe way. But every night between about 7 or 8 in the evening and about 11 or 12, I am upstairs with Holly, and I have my little iPad there researching various things that I need for this. And I will say this, for those of your listeners who are technically capable of building, say, like a Tesla coil or a radio antenna, using bifiller, B-I-F-I-L, bifiller, A-R, bifiller coils. That means two wires in a, how to explain that? It's like two wires, and the current goes in this one and loops around through that one, and you have this long loop that you use as a single wire, and it's called a series wound bifiller coil or a series connected bifiller antenna. And this is very important to getting to the secrets that Tesla was talking about for getting energy out of the sun, and what T. Henry Murray over in Utah was doing with his device before, 1940 even. You can take an insulated wire that will stand maybe 20, 30 kV of charge, make it about 80 feet long, and that's a loop of wire, 80 feet long, which is really 160 feet of wire bent in half, like that. And you twist it like you do a rubber band on a little airplane. We have a prop on. You twist the wire like that, and you put one end down at above ground in a insulated plastic or wooden post up about 10, 12 feet if you can, and the other end back over here, and you'll have two leads coming out of the end that you're going to do business with. And you take one lead, leave it, insulated from the air, and then the other lead, your active lead, you bring that down, and it will produce arcs referenced to ground. So you have to have a deep copper rod, 8 to 15 feet down as your ground stake underneath that. And between that ground stake and that loose end of the wire you're bringing down that you stretched about 80 feet up, you will start to see arcs come across there, especially if you take one of these little fire starters. These little gas fire starters got a piezo thing. You click it and it makes a spark. You click that onto the antenna and start it resonating. And because you've wound it as a bifiller wire or antenna, it will produce a 10-fold multiplication of the voltage you can get out of it over normal coils and normal things. The back EMF is almost non-existent on it. It's an absolutely brilliant way to build an energy trap. Now that's one area I'm working with, and there's a capacitive coupling that I use between the active end of that antenna, the bare end, and the ground. And so I have a capacitive interface which allows the antenna to reference itself to ground and auto resonate. Now, I'm telling you this. I know a lot of your listeners are going to be kind of having crossed eyes and say, "What's he talking about?" But out there somewhere, there are Tesla coil builders and electronics engineers who are hearing what I'm saying. They know exactly what I'm saying, and they can go with this. I may not be able to finish my research for a number of reasons, but I'm sharing this information so that other minds that know what I'm talking about can run with this. Now, bifiller coils, or bifiller antenna rather, is one way to go after the energy, trapping energy that's coming from the sun and the solar wind, and it's impinging on our magnetic field, and it's setting up all sorts of mechanical vibrations that are not necessarily electromagnetic vibrations. But these mechanical oscillations will stimulate that stretched bifiller antenna I'm talking about, and it will convert the mechanical pressures into electricity coming as an arc down to ground, and that hookup I told you about. If you don't steal all of the energy from the antenna once it starts to vibrate of its own accord, it's free resonance. If you don't steal all of the energy, you can pull off a portion of it and use it to do work, usually using step-down Tesla coils to get the frequency and the voltage down to usable levels. Those are just normal conversion techniques and circuits that most people that work in this area know about. The other thing is you can use high voltage charges to spin an electrostatic motor, like Jeff Amenko did. The amount of surface area you have to have on these things, I've been running an Excel program on this. Surface area, charge, altitude of your wire that you put up the side of a hill. You can use an insulated cable up the side of a hill, 1,500 feet, and you'll get a 25, 30,000 volt charge differential between the top of that wire and where you are down to ground. And you can take that lead through your electrostatic or motor and have that motor turn a generator that makes AC current out of it. The problem is that you have to have a big surface area up on the top of that antenna on the side of your mountain where you stretch this thing. You might have to have 900 square feet of aluminum foil or some metal conductor that's insulated from the air and the ground to collect the energy that you need to run your electrostatic generator. That will not produce as much energy as the bifiller antenna resonant circuit I'm talking about. But those are two areas that you can use. You can also make a more efficient wind generator by using an electrostatic generator hooked up to your fan. And whereas normally now when you have the standard wind generators, they have they produce current, more current than voltage, and so they have high torque. But if you go to high voltage, you'll have very small current but the same amount of power going through it, and it's very easy to turn. You don't have the overhead of the gears and mechanisms you do for these high current devices that people use now. So if you make use of high voltage by spinning inductors referenced to ground from just a spinning fan, you'll get much more efficient wind generators. Those are the three areas that I'm working on in my spare time, and trying desperately to make them work. And I will caution people that are doing this to be careful that where you have a ground cable or a ground copper bar that you put in the ground, be careful of lightning strikes. You'll want to have the lightning arresters or shunts to ground to direct the lightning strikes away from your receivers and stuff. This does happen.
Well, I'd like to see your work shed or your workspace. Holy cow. Just by the sounds of that. So pardon my ignorance, but are we talking about like a free energy system?
Yeah. It runs day and night. The bifiller antenna, the Moray device, will work whether it's nighttime or daytime or whether the wind's blowing or not. It is the most efficient way to get the energy that I know of at the moment, other than thermionics, which is just out of the reach of the average person. It's too expensive to build. But these areas, yes. And, if you don't want to have 5 kilowatt generators for your house and you live on the side of a mountain, you can run this wire up, just insulated wire up the side of your mountain, so that the altitude difference between you and the top of that wire is, 1,500 feet. And if you just use the standard 30 volts per foot differential that we all know about, you can pick up 35 to 45,000 volts from the top of that wire down to where you are if you have a ground stake. And you can convert that energy to spin things, spin electrostatic motors that become generators. And that's a poor man's system, and you got to watch it because you'll get some high voltage on it. But that is another thing that people out there that are looking at free energy can look at. You just have to have a bigger surface area up on the top part of your wire, so that it collects a lot of charge and converts it down to energy into the bottom end of that cable. There are equations that you can use and time functions and stuff that you can apply to this, but people that are familiar with charge, capacitor discharge and stuff can figure this. There are a number of equations that are quite common that you can use. And I've looked at it, and it's possible to pull some heavy energy out that way too.
So we can kind of bypass our electric companies.
Absolutely.
Wow.
I mean, if you had nothing more than a few weather balloons, floating up in the air, like Dr. Jeff Amenko did when he talked about this and patented it, you can draw energy maybe 200 or 300 watts as long as those weather balloons are up, but they don't stay up long. So he was only putting weather balloons up to get the charge differential from altitude, which is in the textbook. That's why I say run up the side of a mountain if you got somewhere where you can,
right,
or down in a valley. If you've got that 1,000 to 1,200 foot differential, you can get some hefty voltage out of that.
Wow. Okay.
And there's another one too. Fourth one I forgot. They used this back 100 years ago. The telegraph stations along the railway lines here in the United States had earth batteries where they would put metal plates down in the earth, and they would pick up current from the earth that would power the telegraph system. Now, when they had the Carrington event, had a CME from the sun, that blew up a lot of those things and caught fire to them. But right now, in the daytime, we have current flow from the equator to the poles. At nighttime, from the poles to the equator, all due to currents generated in the earth underneath in the dirt all the time from the interaction of the sun's solar wind with our magnetic field. So there are 4 or 5 different ways, immediately that I've looked at that people could pursue if they've got the time and the energy to do it. I'm just stretched between so many projects that not enough days, not hours in the day, or money to do everything. Or otherwise, I'd be hiring people to go, do this stuff.
Wow.
So that's what I'm telling you.
I got to tell you, the only point of reference I have is remembering back, I think maybe in grade school, making a battery out of a potato, and that's the extent of my knowledge about all of this. But that said, I mean, so you're working on. It sounds like what you're working on. Stan, wasn't there at some point? I don't recall the entire story, but it was somebody had developed a car that didn't require gasoline, and at the time it was shown, somebody from the oil company said, essentially, that's nice. Where does the meter go? And I'm not sure if the story is exactly right, but I mean, I guess the point I'm trying to make is this: wouldn't a lot of people be on your back to stop you from doing what you're doing here? I mean, you're circumventing the entire system of how we do commerce with respect to electrical energy, or with respect to energy.
If I were trying to make $1 out of it, yes. But the way I'm doing it right now, what I'm telling you, those things I have mentioned out, is information that a lot of engineering minds that are open-minded can take and do the construction and build and test these things right now without me making any money, without me applying for a patent, without me trying to interfere with the government, without me selling anything, so I'm not breaking any laws. Right. I'm simply saying, here is the theory. Now go do it.
I see. Okay.
And by doing this, I've released information now then that's out there and it's away. So it's not being lost.
So you're insulated from, pardon the pun, insulated from any type of potential problems, which is good.
Reasonably so. I mean, somebody still might take offense to it, but it's not going to be any gain to come and knock on my door. I mean, it's out there.
Right. Okay. Wow. Yeah. No, that's pretty interesting. I know a lot of people listening tonight have that level of interest in those projects, which you're talking about. A little over my head, Joe. But
yeah. No, Stan is very smart. I didn't even understand half of what he was talking about, but I know a lot of the listeners did, as the free energy is such a interesting topic, and the history behind it is scary and even more interesting. But I wish you the best on your endeavors there, and I hope you are successful. And while we still have you on the phone here on the show. One last area I wanted to discuss with you is the volcano activity we are seeing. We have been receiving emails from our listeners about the uptick in activity around the Canary Islands, the El Hierro, I think.
El Hierro,
also, Indonesia, if I'm not mistaken, just had a volcano eruption. These volcano eruptions seem to correlate with and they go right along the Pacific Rim, the Rim of Fire. Where we're seeing the activity. Do these things, volcano eruptions, can they release some of the pressure you were talking about, even along the west coast of the U.S. if it happens on the opposite side of the Ring of Fire, or is this just showing more of the buildup that we're seeing?
Well, I guess my answer is yes and no. Under certain circumstances, a volcanic eruption from a large magma pool could possibly change the pressures, seismic pressures that would yield a major earthquake. But because most of the earthquake zones we're concerned with on the west coast and in the New Madrid area in the middle of the country are large fronts, large fault lines that have pressures building up all along it, the volcanic action would probably be more of a trigger to release that earthquake than it would be to relieve it. There are ways to relieve earthquake stresses, which the United States has certainly done in Australia, and I guess they've done it here as well. And you can detonate TNT, along tributary fault lines to where the pressure's building, and then when you detonate it, it causes smaller earthquakes all around the major buildup, which relieves the mechanical pressure.
Right.
So in a respect of that, yes, you can mitigate that by causing smaller quakes. But in certain cases, like where the buildup is like for a Richter 9, like up in the northwest corner of the United States at the Juan de Fuca plate, understand that the amount of energy necessary to draw that off, the difference between a Richter 6 and 9 is 1,000 times the energy. It's 10 by 10 by 10, 10 for 7, 100 for 8, 1,000 for a Richter 9. So it becomes counterproductive to go around blasting, tributaries with that kind of energy.
Yeah, I was going to say, could that potentially have a adverse effect and cause all the pressure to release, creating the earthquake everybody feared in the first place?
Yes. I mean, they did this in Australia, north of Perth, about 60 miles north of it when I was down there. And I was getting briefings at that time from an insider. And they had, they were mining research groups from the United States driving around with their Jeeps, blowing up stress lines. But it was to relieve the pressure for a Richter 7 to 8 earthquake that was building up to affect Perth. And Perth had buildings, so many of them that were built without earthquake reinforcement at that time, that it would have probably decimated most of the downtown area of Perth if they had that quake and let it go. But they did release the energy, and it didn't happen. So I was watching that with the feeds I was getting at the time, and being that I was living in Perth at the time, it was of interest.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm seeing reports of what happened in Argentina. There was 18 inches of rain that fell in 2 hours in Argentina.
I wanted to ask you about that. That was amazing. I don't know,
seeing
Stan,
that.
did you see that?
Yeah, and you're going to ask me why?
Well, I was going to continue.
Let's start there.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, go ahead with the why.
Yeah, I want to know why.
We're seeing a number of climatic changes which are being influenced by, I think, the changes in the magnetic pole of the planet, and certainly with the weakening field of the magnetic field. But with the sun's input, with the weakening magnetic field allowing more energy to be absorbed by our planet and thus heating up our seas and our air. It's not cow gas, that's doing this. The majority of this is being caused by the sun itself and the radiation that we're absorbing and not re-emitting. And this is creating a dynamic, out of control weather machine that's really altering our climate. So we're going to see droughts, like we're seeing extreme droughts in places that it just has not been that way for a long time. Extreme rains, extreme freezing, and snow. And all these have happened in the last year. I'm not telling you anything unusual. So we're going to see it in a number of places. What is strange about the Argentinian thing is South America and the northern part of it and parts of the middle of it, plus India in the North Indian Ocean in their area, they're polar opposites. They're antipodal points, and there's earthquakes and that kind of activity building up from Central America down into the west coast of South America. At the same time that there are 5 major hotspots in the sea up into southern India and down toward the equator from there. Now I've had reports coming in, email reports from people that live in India, saying, "What is happening? We're getting no breeze. It's stagnating all of a sudden, and then we're getting high breezes on the other side of the planet in Central America, where they're having to ground helicopters because they couldn't stay up in the winds. And now we're getting the rain over there in Argentina." Well, these are extremities caused by the heat engine, the extreme heat and cool of the Earth. And, it would take, a master supercomputer, brilliant thing and a lot of data feeds to even anticipate what this is going to do next. It is a very complex issue. And like any of these very complex issues, you'll have camps on both sides saying, well, it may or may not be a big thing, global warming, or it may be. And basically, they're all covering their backside, the politicians and the scientific institutions that are being political. But really, what you have to realize is that there are going to be extremes of hot and cold, and the associated weather phenomenon, even lightning storms, super lightning storms like you've never seen before. These things are all going to hit in strange places. I'm seeing it on my daily maps here because I have thermal maps as well as electric charge maps that I'm predicting earthquakes with. But I'm also seeing things behind the scenes with the change in temperature. And this is what I'm seeing over in South America on the Atlantic side. And there's changes there. There's changes up near Iceland. And we're starting to see, I guess over the last 4 weeks, that's a start to see type period. In the North Indian Ocean, these hot spots, these super hot spots, rapidly changing and rapidly warming and rapidly cooling over on the other side of the planet. There's something there to do with current flows inside the Earth. I'm almost positive of it, because direct current flows will carry heat away from one point and build it up in another point.
And
it's called the Thomson effect.
Inside the Earth.
Yeah, I think so.
Instead of, okay. Because we know that I was talking with you earlier, and we talked about the possible shifting or changing of the jet stream. The what were we talking about? The methane releases that were going on.
Methane hydrates. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the potential impact that a mass amount of methane could have on our ecosystem, our atmosphere. And you talked about earlier our magnetosphere is being weakened, and the CMEs that are coming in, and how methane stores the heat from the CMEs, the solar heat we get 20 times more than carbon dioxide does, and how it wouldn't be a global warming effect. It's just a climate change effect from ice melting and the methane being released underneath that ice from microbes that have gas. The easiest way to explain it.
Yeah, microbial farts.
Yeah. And we were talking about this, and I'm like, wow, it's so interesting that, you have little. Go ahead.
It's strange. We were talking about this, but I don't know whether I emphasized the point enough in that once this methane hydrates, they melt, and the methane gas forms that insulating shield around the planet in our atmosphere. Then it gets warmer, which makes more methane hydrate release its methane, which makes a thicker blanket, which makes it warmer still. And it's a self-feeding, nasty situation that will resolve itself after a period of time. It appears to have done that in the past. But if it changes our temperature, which it's doing, but if it changes our temperature up to 2 degrees centigrade as an average across the planet, that is enough to give us the exact opposite of an ice age. And there are two schools of thought on whether we're approaching an ice age or whether we're approaching a heat age. But historical records, geological records show that a drop of 2 degrees centigrade average temperature across the planet generated the ice age. So the opposite of that, going up 2 degrees the other way, use your imagination. It's going to get warm. There's going to be fire breakouts. And we've seen earthquakes off of New Guinea in the last, 7 or 8 years. It was about 7 or 8 years ago, I think it was. There was an earthquake out in the sea north of New Guinea, and it produced a tidal wave. And the residents there were saying, look, the waves are on fire as they come in. And what had happened is that the pressure of the earthquake generated heat that released methane hydrates, and so it caught fire, and it was rolling in waves of fire toward the shore. Now, that's a small methane release. You get more than that, and you might see fires break out over land as well. Just strange stuff.
Wow.
Look down in Louisiana at that sinkhole, stuff bubbling out of that. That's, gas related. And if we have more of that happening in the Gulf, I'm sure we could see some fires on land from that.
There are tremors being reported still. The sinkhole continues to grow. We see sinkholes across the nation and the world continuing to pop up. And I know some of it has to do with salt deposits underneath especially in Louisiana. Are there any other causes of these sinkholes that we can put our finger on and say, okay, it's a salt deposit. Something got into the salt deposit and weakened it, and ground caved in.
Can you see my hands here?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Gravity pulling down on the surface of the Earth forces pressure sideways onto dirt and rock particles. Okay. When you expand and stretch the planet, it lowers this sidewall pressure that all dirt and rock feels. Now, that means that areas where water seepage has been tunneling out a little bit into the salt diapirs or tunneling out a bit of sandstone formation, but it hasn't released. When those are weakened, and we also weaken the gravitational side pressures on it by expanding the planet, then it can't hold it any longer and it collapses. It's not so much the expansion. The expansion just released what was happening there with the water erosion, which is one of the primary culprits in this, but there are other types of fluid erosions that can affect salt diapirs and other formations, acid fluids and things like that. But the root cause has always been there. And so they will tell you in the news, this can't be due to the stretching of the planet because, this is a water intrusion thing here. It tunneled a hole underneath that guy's house and he fell down and he's dead. And the golf course is ruined, blah, blah, blah. And, that's what's really happening. Well, that is true, but that would not manifest right now if it weren't for the lessening of the gravitational, static pressures on the atoms, of the surface of the Earth.
Interesting. That's the best explanation I've heard. And I know we talked about the Earth expanding before. That stuck with me, Stan. In my mind to envision this Earth expansion. It has always been expanding. I mean,
it has, but it does it in leaps, in stages. The there was a point in time where the Earth, where all the continents were in one landmass, Gondwana land, or Pangea, some of them say. All the continents were in this one landmass. And the diameter of the Earth was down to 25% of what it is, 75% of what it is now. Like it was 25% smaller. Now, as the Earth expanded, and we think this is over a period of months, it went from here to here, a third bigger, which is 25% smaller, a third bigger. Now, when it expanded like that, we had reports from a pharaoh in Egypt, in the First Kingdom, I think it was, who complained about the incessant noise of the earth moaning and groaning as it stretched and pulled the continents apart during his reign. Velikovsky reported this in Earth in Upheaval, one of his books. Now, at that time, there was a discrete jump from the small diameter to the large diameter, and then it just kind of stabilized there. I think we'll see another distinct surge of expansion, which is kind of like a quantum level expansion, discrete amounts of expansion. My theory of gravitational masses and how they form and how gravity really works perfectly explains why this happens as planets slow down and age. They expand until they lose the outer shell. It's like a bubble popping, and the energy goes out into the solar system. Or stars do that. They gradually get bigger in most cases, but they age, they get bigger, and they throw off shells and change their nuclear reaction because of their expansion. All of our planets in this system will expand and are expanding as they age as well, as they slow down. Spin, as it slows down the spin, the planet loses mass. It throws shells off. Look at Jupiter and Saturn and any of the planets that have got rings of dust orbiting at their equatorial spins. These are particles of mass that have come from the surface and are being thrown off now.
Wow.
There's just a lot of things happening. I mean, I wish I could finish this gravity paper in a hurry, but it takes time for me to generate the animations and the explanations in speak that is easily understood. I can wave my hands a lot, but it doesn't solve it.
well, I got one final question here for you, Stan. I'm going to throw you a curveball here. I'll bet you don't know but you don't remember what you were doing on a Thursday night, Friday morning on the 14th of September, 1995, do you? Ring any bells?
Art Bell?
Art Bell, yeah, exactly. I got to tell you this, and ladies and gentlemen, the very first time I listened to Stan Deyo was you were talking. You were the guest on the Art Bell show. It was a Thursday going into Friday, and that was the first time. Well, one of the first times that I listened to you, and the first time Joe heard you. And I think you were like 12 years old, Joe, and we were before school. You were getting ready, and you were talking. I remember this specifically about anti-gravitic propulsion systems. In other words, like UFO type of technology, if you will. And I just want to say that was just an amazing, show, and we were listening to you on that day. And I just happened to think of that. I happened to, in our research today, I happened to see that date, and I thought, man, I remember that appearance. You've got to have some fond memories from doing the Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
Yes.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. Where I was, down there in Perth, it would be daytime in the afternoon for doing his show, of course, between 11 and 3 in the morning
Sure.
down here, or up here. But, we had some good times, and I wouldn't have even been on his show except that my brother Glenn, who's a surgeon, had heard the show and said, you ought to talk to this guy about some of the stuff that has happened to you and about your earthquake things, and because he has a few people listen to his show. About 15 million or more, I guess. But I didn't realize what I was getting into, but it was fun. And Art and I had a good working relationship for a long time. I'll tell you what, speaking of Art, he sent me photographs of his antenna there in Nevada when he was still living there at Pahrump. and he had it up on, gosh, I don't know, 25, 30-foot poles around his property, and it was a shortwave antenna he was building. And he was complaining to me over the phone, not over the air, but saying, this darn thing, I put up that new antenna, looped it around those things, and it's making sparks. High voltage is jumping down and ruining all my transmission. I said, Art, listen to what you're saying. That's electricity coming out of your antenna. Oh, yeah. Well, I said, well, don't get rid of it. I mean, use it.
Was he successful in corralling?
I don't know. A few things happened after that, and Ramona died, and things got complicated, and so he moved to the Philippines, and so I don't know whether he ever did any more, but it encouraged me because I looked at the antenna pictures and stuff, and I realized that he just had an insulated wire up there, just like I'm talking about. And it wasn't even a bifiller antenna like I was talking about earlier in the show. And it was getting electricity, which we estimated to be around 600 to 800 volts. And it was coming out of the antenna like this. Pow, pow, pow. Okay. And it was enough that, you could use it. Now, the other thing, you mentioned anti-gravity 1995. Using flat wire to wrap the coils that I've talked about on the YouTube things that people have seen. If you use flat wire, but it's bifiller, it's one of the things I hadn't kind of explained out there, but if you wrap a bifiller flat wire around that donut shape and then around the inside of it, the core of it, like I talked about on the video, then you will see some extraordinary results. You will be able to transfer current flows from one coil to the other without the back EMF problems, because the bifiller eliminates that. That's one of the secrets. So here you go. Wow. First time I let anybody know that.
And there you have it, folks. Some inside information. I'm not sure exactly what bifiller wire is, but
it's two-strand wire.
Two-strand wire.
It's two-strand wire where one end of the wire is joined together. So it's a long loop of wire, and they're close together. So when the current in each wire is going the opposite direction, it goes down the loop and around the corner and comes back, and it cancels out the back EMF problem.
Oh. Actually, I understood that, believe it or not. Okay.
Good.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Stan, in the remaining moments we have, any closing thoughts? I didn't mean to interrupt, Joe. You look like you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to tell everybody once again, bookmark standeo.com. Check it daily for all your news needs, whether it be political, economical, or geographical. Stan has a great earthquake prediction map or monitoring map. Yeah. And he's very accurate and I've never met a man who, if he doesn't know something, you ask him a question, he knows where to go to get the answer. He'll sit down, do the calculations, and figure it out right there with you. A very intelligent, we're blessed to have him on our side of the fence here. In the times we are facing now and all the uncertainty and craziness in the world we see, whether it is geographical or political, we need more minds like Stan Deo, but there is nobody with a mind like Stan, as he is very unique, and that is just awesome that him and his wife, Holly Deo, what they have done together, their body of work they've put together. And I can't thank you enough for being a friend of the show and coming on and answering our questions.
Can you see this blushing here? Oh, shucks. Your dad was saying, why did the Lord send me here? And I guess maybe that's part of it, to share what I've been gifted by the Lord to know, and maybe to share it in a language you can understand.
Oh, you do a great job. And Joe, the other day, as you know, he called you and we were talking and he had all these questions. I said, man, I'm not even sure who to ask. And then he said, well, we both at the same time said Stan Deo. He's the guy to ask. And that was about the methane issue. And you were the first one we thought of. So God bless you, my friend. And folks, like I said, standeo.com, please bookmark that site, as Joe said. And also, The Cosmic Conspiracy, it's a must for your library. It's just jam-packed full of information, and Dare to Prepare, especially in these times. What a marvelous book to have, a reference book. it's on our shelves as well. My friend, my brother, I want to say thank you so very much. Please say hello to Holly and give her our best. And God bless you and thank you so very much for taking your time out tonight to come on our show.
God bless you too for the effort you're doing. So thank you.
All right, my
Bye
brother.
now.
Thank you,
Thanks,
folks. That was Stan Deo from StanDeo.com. What a great guy! What a great Joe. He's a heck of a tremendous guy.
I love having him on. It's fantastic. We got to have him on every so often because I get all these scientific questions, all these issues that I see happening in the world, and really I don't know anybody else to ask that can give me the truthful answers with no agenda behind it, other than the truth. And he does so so willingly and graciously with his time. Can't thank him enough. And we're blessed to have him as a friend of our show. And
it was kind of nice because it kind of kicked back tonight a little bit, and talking very simply about some things.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on with the Earth, a lot of uncertainty going on, more so now than ever with everything we see happening. And it was nice to sit back and relax and ask Stan a few questions, and got a few listener questions in there, and it was all around a good 2 hours. We still have an hour left, so hang in there as we go to commercial break right now. An hour left with myself and my co-host, my father, and taking your calls at 661-244-9839. You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report this Wednesday, April 3rd, 2013. We'll be right back after these short messages. Stay with us.
Hi, folks. Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eilena Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
If you are stumped, you don't know what kind of gift to give to a friend or a loved one, I'm telling you, you must go to 4physics.com. That's the numeral 4, PHYSICS.com. This is your one-stop shopping palace. That's the only way I can put it. I could spend easily an hour on this website. Innovative, fun, educational. There are games, books, weather instruments, unique time-telling devices, jewelry, optical devices, laboratory equipment. Let me give you an example. We all know we can tell time with a sundial. You've seen those advertised. Did you know that you could tell time by the stars? At 4physics.com, you can buy a horologium nocturnum. This was a navigational device used in the 15th century by navigators at night to tell time by the stars. It's beautifully crafted in the shape of a pendant, made of bronze and pewter or gold and silver. Absolutely a stunning gift. I would be proud to give it to anyone. You must go to 4physics.com. Even if you're not stumped, that's 4physics. That's the numeral 4, PHYSICS.com. It's your one-stop shopping palace. Any problems that you have, I don't know what to get Grandpa, I don't know what to get my loved one, that's unique, you will find it at 4physics.com. Please take my word for it. Go to the website, but give yourself a lot of time because you're not going to want to leave. 4physics.com.
The BRICS grouping of emerging powers have agreed to create a development bank that will rival Western-backed institutions. The announcement came as the leaders of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa gathered for a summit in Durban. Many of the details, such as where it will be located, are yet to be decided, but if it does get off the ground, it could send a loud message to the US and Europe that they feel the global power balance is shifting. Also at the summit, Brazil and China signed an agreement to trade vastly more in their own currencies, lessening their dependence on the US dollar and the euro. The emerging BRICS nations already account for around 25% of global GDP and 40% of the world's population.
Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eilena Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Friends, I want to tell you about our sponsors, Freeze Dry Guy and Grandland Firearms of British Columbia. They're kind enough to sponsor this program for us. Grandland Firearms, Lori and Carl Granlund, what a great couple. Any of your firearms, survival, hunting, sporting goods needs, check them out. That's GranlandFirearms.com. Go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on the link on the right-hand side. It'll take you up to Granland Firearms. And while you're there, sign the guest book. And also, Freeze Dry Guy. Do you have a deed for freeze-dried foods? Do you have the means? Call them. Discuss your needs with the Freeze Dry Guy. The folks there at Freeze Dry Guy will help you plan out a long-term storage menu, if you will. They're very accommodating. They're very patient. They'll answer your questions. If you've got allergies or sensitivities to certain foods, they're great to have. A great resource. As a Freeze Dry Guy. Same thing. Go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on the link on the upper right, and there it will take you to Freeze Dry Guy. Can't talk.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our third and final hour of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report this Wednesday, April 3rd, 2013. First 2 hours, if you're joining us late, we're joined by Stan Deo, a friend of the show and all-around tremendous guy. Him and his wife, Holly Deo, have done a tremendous job in creating a huge resource library for survival needs, for information on the New World Order, the One World Government, all of the illusions that we see through finances, through political puppetry and theater. And standeo.com is a website. From there you can navigate your way through their forecasting earthquake maps to their any book that they not only they wrote, but that they think is a good addition to your library for survival and educational needs, is at their website, standeo.com.
I got to tell you, Joe, I never thought when you and I were in the kitchen before you went off to high school back in '95 or whatever grade you were in, that listening to Standeo, that we would actually be talking with him one-on-one like this. And of course, Art Bell, and those are some fond memories indeed. But isn't it funny, the different levels? And this is something that folks will be taking your calls to, 661-244-9839. But isn't it funny how we all wake up at different times? And I received an email tonight from Barb, and I want to just say thanks, Barb, for your email. But isn't it funny that we all wake up at different times? Some have not woken up yet. Some have not realized that everything that we're living, everything that we see, everything that we're touching, and whether it's the news on television or whether it's the newspaper, it's built on lies. And as an investigator for 30 years, I'm a pretty hard sell. Plus, no, even more than that, raising 4 children through their teenage years, that earns me some radar of, that should earn me something, or give me something in terms of discernment when I'm being fed a story or not. That alone should trump the 30 years investigative experience I've got. But Joe, Exhibit A. But that said, it's difficult when you are looking at everything and you're finally realizing that everything you've been told and everything you've experienced has just been a lie. And it's difficult. It's disheartening. And I sense that with Stan tonight. Not the lie part, because he's been plugged into this so long.
Right.
And then earlier today,
the realization that things are falling apart at a rate
right.
we might not want to. I mean, for myself, honestly, I'm sitting here wondering if we are going to, have the same structure of government tomorrow, if we're going to have martial law tomorrow at the rate we are going. I mean, we are seeing in this North Korea thing being number one. Remember the months of the Israel-Iran back and forth, preemptive strikes could happen on Iran.
Right.
Iran could strike Israel. Well, this is like this on steroids. This is a different situation, only on steroids. Every day we're seeing North Korea continuing to up the ante, saying we're going to hit you with a nuke today. Oh, we're going to bomb you. They put out these promotional videos of North Korea bombing the United States. Now they say they approved a nuclear strike on the U.S. Yesterday it declared war. The day before that it said, they're going to launch nuclear weapons on the bases in Guam and South Korea and Hawaii, and not saying that isn't possible, but why the uptick in rhetoric? Why it seems like so it's so right now it's going to happen any second that North Korea is going to launch a nuclear weapon that could cause even an EMP and wipe us back to the Stone Ages, according to some articles. Why is the rhetoric so high? And wouldn't that raise questions of a preemptive strike from the U.S.? Wouldn't that be a fair question after we've seen all the preemptive strike talk from Israel to Iran for minimal rhetoric? And I say minimal because now we see what I would call maximum amount of violent rhetoric coming from North Korea and threatening rhetoric. But, I mean, where do we stand with this? Is this a distraction? Is this to gauge the public's opinion? I mean, does half of the country even know or care what's going on with North Korea or taken into consideration? Do those half of people, or the part of the people who do know, do they understand the dynamics of the politics, which nations are used as proxy nations against, as China is pushing North Korea in a certain direction, or Russia pushing North Korea in a certain direction? And when Stan was talking, what I see is the world being further divided into two groups. And our side is far from innocent. and their side is far from innocent. But what's going to become of this?
Well, if I can just put my 2 cents in here, my analysis, and my analysis is not really my analysis. It's based on a combination of information I've been receiving from others who are a lot smarter and a lot more plugged into the military intelligence apparatus than I am. Here's what I'm getting. And folks, as Joe says, and as I would say, certainly use your discernment, take it to the Lord. But I've got to say this, in my view. Yes, North Korea is a threat to the extent that they could, hey, from a fishing boat off of our shore, turn off our lights. We'll be watching TV in the dark. Go figure. Not really. I'm joking about that. But the all of the information I'm getting is, and I've written about this on CanadaFreePress.com and, of course, HomelandSecurityUS.com. And folks, if you have a chance, my personal Facebook, I put up a link to a video that was, I can't even explain it. I wrote an article about the killing of the dollar. This is all related. What you're seeing in North Korea, what you're seeing here domestically, this is the ushering in of a single global governance. But here's the situation with regard to North Korea. That is a distraction away from Syria. Does that make it any less of a threat? No, it doesn't make it less of a threat, but it's a distraction nonetheless. You see, we are continuing our anti-Assad efforts in Syria. Instead of now the weapons coming through Benghazi and going up into Jordan and Turkey and surrounding areas for ultimate destination into Syria. Folks, where were our forces training on 9/11/2012 when the CIA Operations Center was attacked in Benghazi? Where were they training? I'll answer it for you. Croatia. Where now are the arms and assets going to the anti-Assad terrorists? Where are they coming from? That's right, Croatia. In part. The reason I mention that is this. The more we push for the Muslim Brotherhood / pan-Islamic agenda across the Middle East and specifically into Syria, which Syria is Putin's line in the sand. That's their red line, his red line. The more we push for that, the more we are going to suffer the blowback from it. The Russians aren't kidding around. The Chinese aren't kidding around. Russia is tightly connected to Syria. China is tightly connected to Iran. Syria is the back door to Iran. We are today, right this very moment, we have been at war with Russia. The United States and Russia have been at war through proxies, but we've been at war. The banking things you see, that's right, international bankers.
That's why we see the same countries, China, Russia, doing things, making deals to move away from the dollar, the U.S. dollar, making backdoor deals to sign with other countries to move away from the dollar. One, to wage war against the monetary policy, but two, it keeps in line with an agenda. And I'd like to address, you said you got an email from Barb, and I don't know if she asked a question. I got an email from a Barb who asked this. Hopefully you will answer this question on tonight's show. People say to me, don't worry about all the conspiracies. Give it to the Lord. She says, first off, I say it's not conspiracies. It is agenda. And she goes on to say, but what would you say to someone who thinks you should just not worry and give it to the Lord?
What did Noah do? What did Noah do? Wasn't he told to build an ark and prepare?
He was told he was told to build an ark and prepare. No, and I share the frustration with Barb's email. I understand where she's coming from because to a certain extent, we have to stop and give it to the Lord. But
otherwise we go
sake
nuts.
of knowing nothing. I mean, we can't just hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, leave me out of it. I'm just going to pray. We have to know what's going on with all the things that are happening to destruct them. One, as much as we should pray for our enemies, as it says in the Bible, and our oppressors, we need to know who these people are. We need to know who to trust and who not to trust. As far as conspiracies go, I think the word conspiracy has been turned into a term which is vastly overused for the wrong purposes. A conspiracy means more than one person is engaged in some kind of planning against or planning for something, usually against the law, is where they use the term conspiracies. Like the RICO cases, how they get the mob. They get one person to admit to a crime or a series of crimes, and they can use a conspiracy-based prosecution to arrest, all of the friends of that person if they're involved. Mm-hmm. So it is important to understand that there are evil forces working against the believers in Jesus Christ, because that's what this is. Satan did not come back to this earth. He's not causing trouble with atheists. He's not causing trouble with Satanists. He's causing trouble with believers. So there is a conspiracy, a satanic conspiracy, working against the believers. We see it playing out in our churches. We see it playing out in the different denominations of the churches, and we see our church in Christ on earth is divided.
I talked to Steve Quayle today, Joe, and what you just said there, you're exactly right in my view, but when I was talking to Steve today, we were just talking about how people, especially within the body of the church, let me just say this, how believers, people who profess to be believers, are now going after one another like they've never gone after one another before.
Right. Either through doctrinal differences, through scriptural interpretation differences, when it should have no effect on how you believe, how you prepare, what you do, and what we need to be doing for each other. First and foremost, the golden rule. Yep. You treat everybody how you want to be treated. I was watching a commercial from Russia today. I think I had it on this morning, and I'm not sure what it was from, a documentary. And somebody said, if you get slapped in the face, you're told to turn the other cheek. Well, America, as a Christian nation, doesn't turn the other cheek. They retaliate. And that is true. With the governments, that is true. But I think that speaks more to our love. If somebody slaps you in the face and leaves it at that, hits you once and that's it, you don't have to hit them back. You can, show them, you love them as a person and you're not mad at them. Having your spiritual attributes shine at a time where it might be important for the other person to learn a lesson. But if if you're getting slapped over and over and over and over and over again, it's not wrong to cover your head, to stop yourself from getting slapped. So there's a difference between getting rolled over, allowing yourself to be rolled over, and defending yourself or stopping yourself from being hurt. And I know we're getting way off the...
Well, no, and I'll say this. I don't think we're getting that far off the mark, but I just... there's nothing wrong with defending yourself, but what is distressing to me is this: we do our best job, and folks, you don't have to like us, you don't have to like our ties or our clothes or our settings or whatever, our voices. It doesn't matter. All we're trying to do is give you the information that we believe that you need to know to save yourself, to save your family from a lot of heartache, from a lot of evil that's out there in the world. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be watchmen as described in Jeremiah and fulfill that particular ministry, if you will. And I use that word, I'm not even sure ministry is the right word, but I use that just as a descriptive term. because that's the only thing I can relate it to. But I heard some very distressing audio today, and I was debating whether I should even bring this up. And I know that Joe, you might take issue with it, but for example, there are so many people that are trying to awaken others today. So I mean, really, the jobs that they do. It's some fantastic jobs. I mean, Steve Quayle's been at this for 30 years trying to wake people up. And even Stan Deyo, but Stan Deyo, through his writings, trying to wake people up. Many other pioneers, people playing their particular roles and positions, trying to educate others, that are constantly mocked and ridiculed and marginalized by professionals, by people that are actually through this regime, through the government. But the distressing audio I heard today was, and you might have heard this, folks, Alex Jones talking about how he was being mocked by Glenn Beck, and I thought, we're just turning on each other, aren't we? I mean, are we not just turning on each other? The watchmen that are out there, and then somebody was another person was really taking Rick Wiles to task, and others,
the guy from the Young Turks.
Oh, right, but when I can understand the people who don't want this information out there. I can understand the people from the government, but when it comes from within your own set of watchmen, or people who should be working together, man, to me that's pretty disturbing, and we're seeing more and more and more of that, and that's why we're very I don't even know what the word would be except to say we're very cautious about who we even relate to, because man, it's anymore you don't know who you're talking to. And I have a heavy heart when it comes to this, because I like to believe the best in the people who are attempting to serve as watchmen, whether it be Alex Jones or Glenn Beck or Rick Wiles or insert name here as a watchman. I really want to believe that they're doing this for their calling, for a selfless
there's no time for arguing or debating.
Right.
We can I shouldn't say debating. There's no time to bring other people down. If you can agree that Jesus Christ is the Lord and Savior, all other things are trivial and don't matter. What does it say about Christians who say that they're Christians, who say that they're saved, that agree on this point, yet you bring up a certain issue about something and you have people at each other's throats who say they're believers? That's not biblical. And I'm not perfect. I've been on the other side. I'm a sinner through and through. Every day I do things that aren't right. None of us are perfect.
All of us are that way.
The message is we can all strive to do better in some aspect of our lives every day, because we will never be perfect until we are made perfect. But what we need to do is have a pure heart and always work toward that goal with the Lord as our guide.
Exactly. And folks, I would like to welcome you to the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com. That's the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com, where you can see us. We are streaming in high def video, I believe, so you can see us and watch us and listen to us. There is a chat feature there as well, in addition to the BTR platform. And for that, I want to thank Troy from the Christians United Broadcasting Network. But anyway, yes, so the disturbing part of all this is we know, and I believe that this is a sign of getting close to the end, when you've got this animus among the watchmen, and we try to stay as far away from that as possible. I mean,
I don't even like the word watchman, or being called watchman. I think it's
what's
the word I'm looking for?
But what is the word, though?
I just want to be considered a man whose mission here is to further my own personal agenda with the Lord and help others do the same, the way it says in the Bible. I don't want any special name. I don't want any special recognition. I just want to be a person who is doing everything I can possibly do to help and lead people to the Lord. And that's it.
But I use that term because I don't know what other word to use. Maybe just the 25 words you use there, I just condensed it into Watchmen. But folks, please, really, while we're seeing things heat up in the Korean Peninsula, I would really urge you not to take your eyes off the Middle East. That's where you're going to see the chemical attack be conducted. That's where you're going to see the engagement of United States forces, really, and NATO forces on the ground in Syria. That's really where this is going. Things may happen with Korea. Don't get me wrong. Things, or as a result of Korea, but where the real spark for that third world global conflict is in the Middle East, and specifically Syria, as in Isaiah, Damascus, a heap of ruins. We're going to see that in our lifetime. Maybe, Milo, I don't know. Hey, we could not wake up tomorrow, but you know what I'm talking about. It's going to be sooner rather than later. So I just wanted to tell you about that. Taking your calls, 661-244-9839. 661-244-9839, whatever's on your mind this rest of the show.
And for people watching on video who are technological savvy as my dad, what you do is you take this instrument called the phone, you dial the numbers. No, I'm kidding. My dad not too technical when it comes to his new phone, and he's got a new iPad, and I want to make this announcement because...
Don't get me started.
He did something excellent today. Anybody who's been having problems trying to get in the iTunes feed, subscribing to our show through iTunes, I think he fixed whatever problem was having there.
Yeah, just like a guy, who doesn't want to read an instruction manual. Okay, we did figure out, and this kind of came, long story short, I was trying to figure out how to get an app like InfoWars has to listen to the show on iTunes. I must have like 100 emails from people saying, when are you going to get this app for iTunes? I'm thinking, well, first of all, what's an app? And why do I need one? And so anyway, after making some calls and watching about 2 hours worth of tutorials, realized that we weren't on iTunes in the way that we were supposed to be. So hopefully that will be fixed within the next few days. It took a while, but I think now I understand more. I know more about iTunes than I really want to know about. In the integration between this thing called an iPad, which I got because, well, the reason we needed this was to interface to see how things were playing out with the video and such. It's a long story, but
we have a question for you.
Yes. For me.
Chat. Doug Hagmann, question. Right. What happens after the collapse of the dollar, after the chaos settles down? New currency. Right. I scrolled off my page. New currency and back to normal for those who survive? Question mark.
Yeah. And this is one of my questions I had with all of my contacts and all of my sources. It boils down to this. What's a dollar collapse going to look like here in the United States? What's an economic collapse going to look like here in the United States? And thank you for that question, because that reminds me because here is the consensus. There are varying degrees or variations to this answer, but most, I'm going to say 98% of my sources agree that this is kind of what it's going to look like. We're going to have some type of black swan event, whether it's the euro or whatever Japan, as the guerrilla economist known as V says. But it's going to make its way. It's going to be that black swan event for the United States. The U.S. dollar will stop being the world's reserve currency. Then you're going to have a period of again, the consensus of hyperinflation, where you're going to have all kinds of money, but you're not going to be able to afford to buy anything because the money is going to be worth less and then worthless. And if you want to remember, if you're old enough, you remember when they had $1,000 bills. Do you remember that,
Yeah.
folks?
I heard about this.
Oh, yeah.
The possibility of bringing back the $500 bill to $1,000 bill being brought back. Or yeah, we were reading the same.
Isn't that like? See, people say, "Oh, well, this can't happen here," or you're fear mongering, or you're an alarmist. Well, think about this. If they are, in fact, bringing back, for example, or and before when there was $1,000 bills in, I don't want to say in circulation that were being used, they were being used primarily for business, commercial reasons. It was more on a state government higher level. It wasn't, people weren't walking around with $1,000 bills in their pocket. Well, maybe some were.
I saw a funny comment. $1,000. Will $1,000 bill go for three McDonald's dollar menu? And that's not finished. That thought's not finished. But I see where you're going with this. I mean, yeah. Are we going to see, the dollar menu turn into the $100 menu at McDonald's in the next,
Well, look at see, and my sources just told me, look, I don't have time to hold your hand. You study history. Look what happened in Argentina. Look what happened in Zimbabwe, Rhodesia, for example. You study that and then get back with me with your questions. And of course, the conversations would have taken place over a period of time. But yes, we're going to be hit with this black swan event. Whether it happens overnight, whether there's a period of hyperinflation and like a collapse overnight, or it extends over a period of days, it's not going to extend for the crash. The crash will be either like a car going off a cliff and hitting the bottom without hitting any rocks on the way down, or that same car falling off the cliff and hitting bumps on the way down. Either way, it's going down and it's going to be at the bottom of the cliff. The question is it going to hit any obstructions? It doesn't matter. It's going to go to the bottom of the cliff and it's going to be destroyed, and end of story. But see. Well, but the other end of this is after a period of chaos and of uncertainty and everything, and this is the very crux, and this is where the suspects can be identified. Once things start going back to normal, the globalist who caused this, who set this up, will say, okay, we're going to save you, we're going to fix everything up, because this is going to be global. You're not going to be able to run to Panama and get away from it, or run to Argentina, or run to the Caymans and get away from this. This is going to affect every nation on the planet. And there will be people that will starve during this period of between the fall and the fix. This is what folks, this is what we're preparing for. The time period between the fall and the fix. Because at the time of the fix, you're going to have the globalists step in and say, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to digitize all currency. We're going to separate the world into 10 economic zones. And we're going to center the banking system out of London City, which is different than London, but London City. And guess who resides there? Yes, the Illuminati, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the bankers, the international bankers. And that's where the fix is going to come in. But see, they created the problem. They're going to create the solution, or have already created the solution. So that's, I don't know if did I answer that question? I get really excited when I talk about this, because to me, looking at it, it's always been about the money. And every crime, well, almost every crime, but every criminal activity that Joe and I have investigated, at least I've investigated, usually has an element of theft involved. Now, we've seen some murders and suicides or murders, for example, that did not have that theft component to it, but the criminal element usually does have the greed, the theft, and this is at the very heart of what we're talking about here. Is that moment where they want it all, and you see they're buying. they're buying their future. They're buying. They're robbing us of our wealth that we've accumulated. And Cyprus, what happened in Cyprus? Oh, you betcha, it's going to happen here. Canada. You were looking at papers, Joe. You showed me the very papers that lay out the plans for this. So I hope I answered the question. So that's what we're looking at, in my view, based on the consensus of opinions. And the people that say, by the way, it's silver and gold. People say, well, that's not going to do you any good. You can't eat it. They're in the scripture about throwing it in the streets. Yeah, later. That's going to happen when you can't trade. You will not be able to trade because of the mark of the beast, essentially. Go ahead, Joe.
We're going to go to the phones. Area code 205. We're going to come to you first. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Gentlemen, how are you doing tonight?
Very well.
Fantastic. I was watching you there on television. It's great to watch you guys there. You got a pretty good picture, and the sound was very good tonight over there on the video channel. I want to bring up one thing that Stan Dale was talking about the possibility of electromagnetic pulse. I was wondering if you guys were familiar with a thing called the Starfish Prime experiment. Starfish Prime, Prime. Are you familiar with that?
No. Joe?
Go to Google, the Google search engine. If you type in Starfish Prime, one of the top links there will be a story over at Wikipedia. Starfish Prime was a high-altitude nuclear test conducted by the United States out in the Pacific on July 9th, 1962. They launched a missile that reached an altitude of 250 miles when they set off an atomic explosion, and they miscalculated how much of an electromagnetic pulse it would actually generate, and it caused a lot of their instrumentation to go off scale. But here's the interesting point was, though, that in Honolulu, Hawaii, which was 898 miles away from the explosion, it burned out approximately 300 streetlights, set off numerous burglar alarms, and damaged the telephone microwave links that they used to communicate with the other islands. You know, Hawaii is actually several islands put together there, and they were using microwave links, and it burned that out. So it just gives you an idea of what can happen, that a nuclear explosion at high altitude really does apparently produce a very strong electromagnetic pulse.
Yeah, I read about that incident. I didn't know what it was called, but I do recall reading about the damage from the electromagnetic pulse. And in fact, we went to Joe and I went to a seminar in Buffalo, New York, to a preparedness seminar about. It was with county officials and police officers, and I don't know who else was there. The county head of the county, and they were talking about 1 second after the book and the electromagnetic pulse and just the dire straits that we would be in. And they had mentioned this in as an example. So
yeah, as an example, the Starfish Prime project, right? Yeah. Did you pick up one thing that I had heard, and it was interesting that Stan Dale confirmed it. He said, apparently, we now here in the United States, since we've all of our good, heavy industry is, if you pardon the expression, gone to hell in a handbasket because we've sent everything to Mexico and to China. Apparently, we are not making those very large transformers at our electrical power stations in the United States anymore. So if we burn several of them out, we're not making them here. We have to wait on, I guess it's China, to make them for us and ship them over here. Did you pick that up when he mentioned that tonight?
Indeed, I did, and I know Joe and I have talked about it. Who do we have to thank for that? Seriously,
one world globalist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just want to pass on the information there about the Starfish Prime project to know with you, and people might want to Google that and read it. It's quite interesting. Well, anyway, thanks, guys, for another great show tonight. It was really very interesting.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for the call and the information, and I'm going to look into that. You have a good night.
Yeah, take care. Good night. Bye-bye.
One more thing before we go to the next caller, I forgot to mention. Tomorrow night, we will be joined by our very special guest, Mr. Paul McGuire.
Holy cow.
This will be a show you are not going to want to miss. We're going to have article up on our website promoting this. And what Mr. McGuire asked, what we could get into, what we could talk about, what should we talk about, as so much is going on. Maybe I should read some of the possible topics, and I know we can probably hit all these if we want to, but
Well,
some
if
of
you ever heard
his
this guy,
idea,
wow.
some of his ideas were the Luciferian elite in World War III, the future of America in prophecy, warfare in the fourth dimension. This gentleman is very educated and has a great understanding of the New World Order, the Luciferian New World Order, and their elite, as well as Christianity. And as far back as as Christianity goes, the pagan aspect of the Babylonian, Medo-Persian, Greece to now Roman Empire, especially the Roman pagan empire that we seem to be living in as a Christian people. We are still under the pagan Roman calendar and system that they used. But don't forget tomorrow night, Paul McGuire. Hopefully he'll be on for the whole 3 hours. Just got to work out those final details with him tonight and tomorrow. But
I got to
don't
tell you
miss
though, yeah, folks, if you just go ahead and search his name, Paul McGuire, McGuire, and boy, you can get tuned up by some of the videos that are out there from him. Holy cow! My
we
goodness.
watched one the other day. The government. I forget the title. It was just excellent. I'll post it on Facebook and try to post it on. We'll get that video up on the website if we can before tomorrow's show.
Can.
Going to the phones, we're going to go to Pierre. He's been on hold for a while. Pierre of Freedomizer Radio on Blog Talk Radio, Exposing the Enemy, is live with us now on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Pierre, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing all right, guys. How are you two doing?
Very well. What's on your mind, man? What's on your radar, Pierre?
Well, I've done some work for the Lord today as a watchman. I've talked to some fellow coworkers and even talked to some people today about what's going on. And there's quite a few people that are actually a very positive thing, especially in light of what we deal with. And there are some that were doubtful, so I pointed them to your site and to various other sites to gather information on things like the FEMA camps, the guillotine issue, what's going on with the economy and what have you. In terms of what's on my radar, did you guys happen to see the latest that came out from Reuters? It says North Korea seems to be moving mid-range missiles to the East Coast. Did you guys see that already?
I saw a few different updates. One, North Korea approves nuclear strike on U.S. Another one, North Korea or South Korea submarines are missing. And the one you mentioned was North Korea is moving
missiles.
But
Pierre, is this or is what we're seeing with that specific the missile thing? Is this? I mean, are you serious? If we are at war, I mean, this sounds so much like a false flag thing. This sounds so much like a false flag.
What a lot of people don't understand about the whole Korean thing is because a lot of people saying, America, you're making us bad, or the North Koreans are making us bad. The bottom line, folks, is all of this happened before most of us were born. It's an armistice. And you must all understand what an armistice means. It's not a truce. It's not a peace treaty. It is nothing more than a temporary cessation of hostilities between two powers. A technical state of war has existed for roughly 70 years between the North and the South. So for anyone to think otherwise, that is, I'm going to call it as it is pretty stupid and pretty ignorant. People should know their history. Okay, now that part's out the way. What you're asking me is this part of a false flag thing, or is this a false flag? I don't see any of this being false anymore. As far as I'm looking at this from that tactical mindset that I have right now, this is about as real is going to get right now. You have the 190th Mechanized Infantry Brigade of the People's Liberation Army of China locked on at the border, at northeast China. They have moved up their most advanced aerial assets there. That means their stealth fighters are up there, okay, ready to go, probably to deal with our aircraft from the aircraft carriers that are being route, which, by the way, folks, if you haven't kept checked on that, we're going to have 3 aircraft carriers in that region, one of which is already there, and that's the George Washington. There's 2 more.
I shudder because of Pearl Harbor. Thinking of Pearl Harbor, I shudder about that, but go ahead.
So we've got that issue going. The SBX-1 radar, which is something most people just are not dialing into right now. You got to understand, this radar is no joke. They moved this thing, the Navy moved it from Alaska to North Korea. It took 4 months to move it. It's that slow. And now the SBX-1 is there. And they're going to have a couple of ships triangulating with this radar to track anything that's going on. We have to look at Japan and what they're going to do with their economy aside from the collapse. They might just abrogate Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution and give themselves the powers to declare war. That means they can create a standing army. There will no longer be a, quote, self-defense force or any of that stuff. And all this stuff is building up to the ultimate, bumping of heads. That's not even counting the Russian military movements that are happening along North Korea that no one's reporting on. And then you're talking about Syria. All of this, folks, leads to smoke and mirrors. And it's deception upon deception, correction, deflection upon deflection upon deflection. It's going to be very hard to track what's going on. And
Thank you.
You're welcome, because this is the key thing. And this is something that you've been talking about, something that I've been talking about on my show. It's you guys got to be able to discern what is going to be happening here. I mean, whatever's happening in another corner of the world has a direct impact here. And I see smoke and mirrors. But this is going to be bloody. Kim has to do something. He has to, And I'm not backing him. Don't get me wrong. He has to do something now. Because, you see, he said too much. He's crossed that Rubicon way long time ago. And now if he doesn't do something, he loses space, and his country loses space, more specifically his military. So what are we looking at here? If he doesn't do something soon, and I mean in very short order, he could face removal in a form of assassination. Well, who would do it? Either his own people will, or the Chinese will, because I think the Chinese personally are very tired of North Korea. I think they're sick and tired of the games. I think they're sick and tired of how far Kim has gone, because he's gone farther than what his grandfather has done. And so now that puts them at a point to where they don't want to be put in a defensive posture. Now look what's happening with China. They're in a defensive posture. Now imagine what China's going to do when those 3 carriers arrive. You see where all this is going? This 28-year-old upstart has created something that I don't even think he knows how to control, but he's got to run with it now. And that's where this is, folks. He's not going to back down. He's not going to say, oh, I'm sorry, or, whatever. He's not asking for food. This kid is talking war.
But see, Pierre, I don't think he would be talking war if China wasn't whispering that in his ear. And I look at him as a puppet of China, North Korea being a client state of China, for the sole purpose of attacking us asymmetrically for our meddling in the Middle East, specifically ultimately against Iran and Syria, if for no other reason than that. And we keep doing that, just like Benghazi was an artifact of our arms shipments to Syria for use by the anti-Assad rebels. Russia said, don't be doing this, and of course Benghazi happened. The same thing is going to happen over here in Korea. We keep messing around.
Let's say this stuff. I'll go with your theory. I'll go with your theory on that, and I'll back your theory up with this. If this is the case, let's go with your option here. If what you're saying is true, And if it pans out, and the intel is showing that China is really doing all this stuff, and North Korea is going to do this, then what we're looking at here is going to probably be a 3-war front. North Korea will attack.
Right. Yep.
Okay, North Korea will attack, but China will not attack. They made it perfectly clear. It's part of the defense pact. If North Korea attacks the South, they will not attack. They will only come in physically if we, the U.S., and the ROC, the Republic of Korea, go into the North. At the same time, the Chinese dispute over the Senkaku Diaoyu Islands is the perfect time for the Chinese to flex their muscle.
Right.
At the same time, the Japanese have problems with the Spratly Islands. All this stuff is connected, folks, believe it or not. Those islands are contested by who? Russia and Japan. Then the Middle East can flare. There is no way that the United States of America, right now, where our military is, there's no way we can respond to all that stuff effectively. We can't. We've been way too crippled, folks. And this is the point I've been telling you all for the longest time. And now with the sequestering and stuff and our fleets locked in port, you cannot tell me that if someone wanted to attack us right now, with that being a smoke and mirrors event, we cannot respond with any force whatsoever.
Pierre, when I was on Coast to Coast on Monday, and on the video I did, that's on YouTube on our video channel, 3 objectives. Number 1, spread our military out. Number 2, hit us economically. And thirdly, keep us occupied diplomatically. We're done. The
only way you can do it, divide the people. We're already done. It's just a question of when it's going to go down. Now, people, we don't have much time. We only got 5 minutes left. I'm just going to be short here. Understand, I'm not trying to be a defeatist here. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I'm anything but a defeatist. I'm a pragmatist, so I look at the reality of things. What's going on right now is what we're looking at here is the physical fall of America. It is coming. It is here. All these events are designed to bring us down on multiple fronts.
Yep.
You want to stop this? Pray. Get your spiritual houses in order, like I said before. That is paramount. And 2, the most important thing we need to do is be ready for whatever action is going to be taken, because something will happen simultaneous to what's happening in Korea. Something will happen simultaneous to what will happen in the Middle East. The exchanging of fire has already happened with Israel over there in Syria. You guys notice that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Already happened. But I won't take up your time, guys, because I know it's short. We'll have to connect at another time. But I just want to make it clear to everyone that's listening to me, this is real. This ain't a joke. Whether it's a proxy game or what have you, this is no longer the jaw-jacking, saber-rattling that we knew of North Korea. Things are about to get very real over there. Extremely real. They don't have to launch a nuke from North Korea to hit America, folks. We got American military bases in South Korea. You want to know what the response time to a nuke is there? None. Because if it launches from North Korea into South Korea, you only got about a minute.
Right.
And that's it. A minute.
And we've got 28,000 troops over there of our own.
Exactly. And they're scattered along the DMZ and various other places.
6,000 in Guam. We got the bases in Hawaii. And we're all over the place over there, and it is very dangerous. And keep those military men and women in our prayers, and their families, and the people of those other areas in our prayers as they need them.
Yeah, this is not an episode of MASH. Yeah, we're not looking at another episode of MASH or something. This is very real, Pierre. You hit it right on the head. I want to say God bless you and thank you so much for all of the effort you put into your messages. Wow.
Thanks, Pierre. We'll talk to you later. And you can catch Pierre on Freedomizer Radio, Exposing the Enemy, right here on Blog Talk Radio. Have a good night, Pierre.
Good night,
Take care.
Pierre.
Good night.
Yeah, we've got to close the show. I don't think we have enough time for another call, but I got to tell you, Joe, what Pierre said.
90 seconds.
What's that phrase? What he said. I mean, pretty much.
We know that the U.S. government is planning the U.S. government, along with the New World Order, is planning on implementing an agenda. We know that they will do anything. Any person is expendable. Any amount of people are expendable nothing is off the table as far as what they will do to pull off their agenda, because they're not warring against us. They're warring against the spiritual world and the Lord Jesus Christ. And
That's right.
They do not care about human beings. They care about stealing souls. And
but don't worry about that. Just keep just keep talking to the relatives who are saying, "Hey, the Dow's great, stock trades are great. God bless it. Metals are down. You're a fool for buying silver and gold when you did. Everything is fine."
And I just want to say this. I don't think I answered Susan's questions from earlier about, how to answer people who say, "Oh, the conspiracy, leave it to God to figure out." Well, I'll try to address that tomorrow, but the simple answer is we need to understand how many angles we're being attacked from to understand where to stand and fight, and where, to side with or not to side
10
with.
10 seconds.
People aren't going to be asking that question much longer.
Right. God bless each and every one of you. Tomorrow, Paul McGuire will be joining us. It's going to be an awesome broadcast. Do not miss it. God bless each and every one of you. Thank you for listening, and have a great night.
Good night.